Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto inherited Sung Jinwoo's Shadow Monarch system? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The rain fell in sheets across the ravaged battlefield, washing blood into the muddy earth. Naruto Uzumaki dragged himself forward on trembling arms, his orange jumpsuit torn and darkened with dirt and blood, most of it his own. The mission had gone catastrophically wrong. What should have been a routine escort to the border of the Land of Rivers had turned into an ambush by missing nin who seemed to know exactly when and where they would be. Sasuke. Sakura. His voice was barely audible over the downpour. No response came. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating bodies scattered across the sea. Leering. His teammates weren't among them, at least not that he could see. He hoped they had managed to escape with their client. The last thing he remembered was creating shadow clones to draw away the attackers while the others fled. Pain lanced through his side where a poisoned kunai had struck him. The wound should have been healing by now. The Nine-Tails chakra usually saw to that. But Someth-ing felt different this time. The familiar burning sensation of the fox's power was absent, replaced by a cold emptiness that spread through his veins like ice water. "You don't look so good, kid." Naruto's head snapped up. A figure stood before him, cloaked in darkness despite the lightning that periodically lit the sky. The stranger's face remained obscured, but Naruto could feel the weight of their gaze. "Who are you?" Naruto gasped, struggling to rise. "That's not important." The figure knelt beside him. "What matters is that you're dying, and I'm offering you a choice." Naruto tried to laugh, but it came out as a wet cough. "Not much of a choice. More than you think." The stranger's voice was neither male nor female, young nor old. "The Nine-Tails seal has been compromised by the poison. Its chakra is being suppressed, and without it, you won't survive the night." Naruto's eyes widened. The seal, damaged. He'd always feared the fox breaking free, but never considered what might happen if its power simply vanished. "I can offer you something else," the stranger continued. "A different power. One that won't fight your will or threaten to consume you. One that grows with every victory." "What kind of power?" Despite his suspicion, Naruto couldn't help but be curious. He'd spent his entire life being feared for containing the Nine-Tails, a burden he never asked for. The stranger extended a hand, palm up. A small black orb floated above it, swirling with shadows that seemed to drink in what little light remained. "The power to command death itself. To raise an army from those who fall before you. To become a monarch of shadows." Naruto stared at the orb. Something about it called to him, not with the Nine-Tails' malevolent hunger, but with a cold, patient strength. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you understand loneliness," the stranger replied simply. "And loneliness is the beginning of all monarchy." Another bolt of lightning, and Naruto glimpsed eyes with the hood, ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. "If I accept," Naruto coughed again, feeling his consciousness slipping. "What happens to the Nine-Tails?" "Its chakra will be absorbed into the system, becoming the foundation of your new power. The beast itself will slumber, perhaps forever." Naruto closed his eyes, thinking of all the times the villagers had looked at him with hatred and fear because of what was sealed inside him. A life without that burden, it seemed impossible to imagine. "I accept," he whispered. The stranger nodded once and pressed the orb against Naruto's chest. "Then rise, Shadow Monarch." The orb sank into him, and Naruto screamed as ice flooded his veins. His vision darkened, then burst with blinding light. Within his mindscape, he saw the Nine-Tails thrashing against its cage as shadows enveloped it, pulling its chakra away and transforming it into something new. "What is happening to me?" Naruto called out, but the stranger was gone. In Tyr place stood a black shadow with glowing blue eyes, tall and regal, wearing armor that seemed to be made of darkness itself. "I am Ashborn, the previous Shadow Monarch," a voice echoed in his mind. "And you are my successor." The world faded to black. Naruto woke with a gasp, bolting upright on a hospital bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, so bright it made him wince. How long had he been unconscious? "Easy there," Came a familiar voice. Kakashi sat in a chair by the bed, his visible eye crinkling in what might have been relief. You gave us quite a scare. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's voice sounded strange to his own ears, steadier, somehow. What happened? Where are Sasuke and Sakura? They're fine. A bit bruised, but nothing serious. Kakashi closed his book and leaned forward. They managed to get the client to safety, then circled back with reinforcements. They found you unconscious in the clearing. And the attackers? A curious look crossed Kakashi's face. Dead. All of them. Though no one can figure out how. There wasn't a mark on them. Naruto frowned. He had no memory of defeating the missing nin. The last thing he remembered was accepting the stranger's offer, and then he looked down at his hands. They seemed normal enough, but something felt different. A power hummed beneath his skin, cool and controlled, nothing like the Nine Tails' chaotic energy. Naruto. Kakashi's voice grew serious. Lady Tsunade examined you while you were unconscious. The Nine Tails chakra has changed. She's concerned. Before Naruto could respond, the door swung open, and Tsunade herself strode in. Followed by Jiraiya. You're awake. Good. The Hokage's amber eyes studied him intently. How do you feel? Fine. Better than fine, actually. It wasn't a lie. Despite having nearly died, Naruto felt stronger than he ever had before. Jiraiya approached the bed, his usual jovial expression replaced with cautious concern. Kid, something happened to the seal. The Nine Tails chakra is still there. But it's been transformed. Can you tell us what happened out there? Naruto hesitated. Would they believe him if he told them about the stranger and the offer? Would the why fear this new power as they had feared the Nine Tails? I'm not sure, he said finally. I was injured, dying maybe. Then everything went black. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. Naruto wasn't ready to share what had happened until he understood it himself. Tsunade exchanged glances with Jiraiya. Well, whatever happened, you seem stable for now. But I want you to stay in the village for observation. No missions until we figure this out. Naruto nodded, surprising everyone with his lack of protest. Get some rest, Tsunade ordered before leaving, Jiraiya following after giving Naruto a long, searching look. Kakashi remained, watching Naruto carefully. Is there anything you're not telling us? Naruto met his sensei's gaze steadily. I need to figure some things out first. But I promise, if there's danger to the village, I'll tell you everything. After a moment, Kakashi nodded. Fair enough. I'll check on you tomorrow. He rose and headed for the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. Oh, and you might want to prepare yourself. You've had a visitor camped outside your room since you were brought in. Rather persistent. The door closed behind him, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts, or so he believed. Not alone, came the voice from his dream. Never alone again. Naruto's head snapped up. Who's there? I am Ashbourne. The shadow in your shadow. The power in your veins. Are you? In my head. In a manner of speaking. I am the system you now possess. The power of the Shadow Monarch. Before Naruto could question further, a gentle knock came at the door, followed by a familiar voice. Naruto-kun. Are you awake? Hinata Hyuga peered around the door, her pale eyes wide with concern. Hinata, you've been waiting outside. A blush crept across her cheeks as she stepped into the room. I was worried. They said you were found alone, surrounded by dead enemies. She fears you, Ashbourne's voice whispered. As they all will, in time. But looking at Hinata's face, Naruto saw no fear, only genuine concern. I'm okay, he assured her. Better than okay, actually. She approached the bed hesitantly. Your chakra feels different. Of course she would notice with her Byakugan. The Hyuga eyes missed little. Yeah, something happened out there. I'm still figuring it out. He smiled, trying to ease her worry. But hey, I'm alive, right? Hinata returned his smile, though concern still lingered in her eyes. I'm glad. When they brought you in, you were so cold, like death. Naruto finished for her. She nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small charm. I made this for you. It's supposed to help with healing and protection. Naruto accepted the charm, a simple braided cord with a small carved wooden seal. As his fingers brushed against Hinata's, A curious sensation passed through him, like his shadow momentarily reached toward hers. Interesting, Ashbourne commented. She has potential. Potential for what? Naruto asked aloud before he could stop himself. Hinata blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Nothing. Sorry. Thinking out loud, he clutched the charm, genuinely touched. Thank you, Hinata. This means a lot. She smiled. A real smile this time, and Naruto felt something stir inside him, not the system, but his own heart. After Hinata left, promising to visit again tomorrow, Naruto turned his attention inward. Okay, Ashbourne, or whatever you are, time for answers. What exactly happened to me? You have become the Shadow Monarch, inheritor of my power. The system allows you to extract shadows from those who fall before you, turning them into your soldiers. With each shadow you claim, you grow stronger. And the Nine Tails, its power has been absorbed into the system, transformed into something new. The beast itself slumbers within you, neither a threat nor an ally. Naruto frowned. So these shadows, they're like zombies. Not precisely. They retain their skills and intelligence, bound to your will. They are extensions of your shadow, your army. I don't want slaves, Naruto said firmly. They are not slaves, Ashbourne corrected. They are soldiers who have pledged their existence to you. In death, they found purpose. The concept still unsettled Naruto, but he couldn't deny his curiosity. How do I use this power? That is for you to discover. But perhaps a demonstration is in order. Naruto felt a sudden pull, urging him to leave the hospital. Without fully understanding why, he slipped out of bed and found his clothes in a nearby cabinet. Moving silently, he made his way out of the window rather than risk running into anyone in the hallway. The village was quieting as evening approached. Naruto kept to the shadows, following the insistent pull until he reached the training grounds. Specifically, Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. Why am I here? He asked, staring at the imposing trees beyond the fence. Because something has died here recently. Something worthy of becoming your soldier. Naruto hesitated only briefly before jumping the fence. The forest was eerily quiet as he made his way deeper in, guided by an instinct he didn't understand. After several minutes, he came upon the massive corpse of a predator, one of the giant tigers that roamed these grounds. It had been dead for at least a day, its body already beginning to decay. Other predators had started to feed on it. What am I supposed to do with this? Naruto asked, wrinkling his nose at the smell. Extend your shadow. Claim what remains of its essence. Naruto noticed for the first time that his shadow seemed darker than normal. More substantial somehow. Following instinct, he focused on it, willing it to stretch toward the tiger's corpse. To his amazement, his shadow responded, extending across the ground like spilled ink until it touched the dead beast. As soon as contact was made, black particles began to rise from the corpse, swirling into the air before being drawn into Naruto's shadow. A notification appeared in his mind, as clear as if he were reading it. Shadow extraction successful. Tiger shadow added to army. What the? Naruto stumbled back as his shadow returned to normal size. Did I just? Yes. You now command its shadow. Call it forth. How? Think of it. Will it too appear? Naruto closed his eyes, picturing the tiger as it must have been in life, powerful, graceful, deadly. He felt a surge of cold energy flow through him, and when he opened his eyes, a black silhouette stood before him. It was unmistakably the tiger, but formed entirely of shadow, with glowing blue eyes that matched the color he'd seen in Ashbourne's form. The shadow tiger regarded him silently, awaiting command. This is. Naruto struggled for words. Your first soldier, Ashbourne supplied. Command it as you would your own limbs. Experimentally, Naruto thought, circle around me, and immediately the shadow tiger obeyed, moving with fluid grace. Can it fight, as well as it did in life? Better, perhaps, as it knows no fear or pain. Naruto heard a rustling in the underbrush, another predator, drawn perhaps by the scent of death. Without conscious thought, he directed the shadow tiger toward the sound. It moved like liquid darkness, vanishing into the foliage. Seconds later, a pained yelp echoed through the trees, followed by silence. The shadow tiger returned, its glowing eyes seeming almost satisfied. You learn quickly, Ashbourne observed. But this is merely the beginning. Lesser creatures will provide minimal growth. It is from worthy opponents that you will gain true strength. Naruto commanded the shadow tiger to return to his shadow, and it dissolved into particles that sank into the ground at his feet. The process felt natural, as if he'd been doing it his entire life. I need to understand more about this power before I use it around others, Naruto decided aloud. If the village feared me for containing the 9 tails, what would they think of this? Wise, Ashbourne agreed. The path of the monarch begins in solitude. But it need not end there. Naruto made his way back toward the village, his mind racing with questions and possibilities. He had always wanted strength to protect his precious people, to earn recognition and respect. This power offered that and more, but at what cost? He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the sounds of struggle coming from near the hot springs. Pausing, he extended his senses, another new ability, it seemed, and detected 3 chakra signatures. 2 were civilian, 1 was Hinata. Without hesitation, Naruto changed course, moving swiftly through the gathering darkness toward the disturbance. As he approached, he heard male voices, rough and threatening. Pretty little Hyuga, out all alone. Those eyes would fetch a nice price. Please. I don't want any trouble. Too late for that. Naruto rounded the corner to find Hinata backed against a wall by 2 men, rough-looking civilians, possibly merchants based on their clothes. One held a knife, while the other reached for Hinata's face. Rage bloomed in Naruto's chest, cold and precise rather than the hot fury he was accustomed to. His shadow stretched without conscious command, darkening the already dim street. Get away from her, he said, his voice carrying an authority he'd never possessed before. The men turned, startled. The one with the knife recovered quickly, sneering at Naruto's slender frame and hospital clothes. Mind your own business, kid, unless you want to get hurt. Naruto stepped forward, and something in his expression did the unarmed man take an involuntary step back. Naruto-kun, Hinata gasped, her Byakugan activated but her stance uncertain. These weren't shinobi. Using her gentle fist techniques might kill them. It's okay, Hinata, Naruto assured her, his eyes never leaving the men. I won't let them hurt you. The knife wielder lunged forward with surprising speed, a bandit perhaps, or a mercenary fallen on hard times. You should have walked away, brat. What happened next occurred so quickly that even Naruto wasn't entirely sure of the sequence. His shadow surged forward, solidifying around his arm as he blocked the knife thrust. The blade shattered against the shadow-armored limb. Before the attacker could react, Naruto's fist connected with his sternum, enhanced by a strength that hadn't been there before. The man flew backward, crashing into the wall with enough force to crack the stone. He slumped to the ground, unmoving. The second attacker turned to flee, but Naruto's shadow stretched across the ground, wrapping around the man's ankles and tripping him. He fell hard, his head striking the pavement with a sickening crack. Silence fell. Naruto stood motionless, his shadow returning to normal as he stared at the 2 fallen men. Are they? Hinata approached cautiously. Naruto didn't need to check. He could feel it, the moment life had left their bodies. And with that awareness came another sensation. The pull of shadows waiting to be claimed. Take them, Ashbourne urged. They are yours by right of conquest. But Naruto hesitated. These weren't enemies on a battlefield or predators in a forest. They were people, criminals. Yes, but still people from his own village. No, he said quietly, withdrawing his shadow. Not them. An interesting choice, Ashbourne commented, neither approving nor condemning. Hinata reached Naruto's side, her eyes wide as she looked from the fallen men to him. Naruto-kun, your chakra, it's changed even more. He turned to her, suddenly fearful of what she might see in him now. Hinata, you saved me, she interrupted, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Thank you. Relief washed through him. She wasn't looking at him with fear or disgust, but with the same gentle acceptance she'd always shown. We should report this, Naruto said, glancing at the bodies. But, you were supposed to be in the hospital, Hinata finished for him. And your new abilities might raise questions. Naruto nodded, surprised by her quick understanding. I'll report it, she offered. I'll say I defended myself. The Hyuga name will prevent too many questions. Hinata, I can't ask you to lie. You're not asking, she said with unexpected firmness. I'm offering. You saved me, and now you need time to understand what's happening to you. Her expression softened. I can see it, Naruto-kun. Something fundamental has changed within you. Naruto stared at her, seeing for perhaps the first time the strength that lay beneath her gentle exterior. Thank you, Hinata, she nodded. Go back to the hospital before they notice you're missing. I'll handle this. As Naruto turned to leave, Hinata called after him softly. Naruto-kun. He paused, looking back. Whatever this new power is, I believe in you. You've always used your strength to protect others. I know that won't change. Her words warmed something cold that had been growing in his chest since the transformation. With a grateful nod, he disappeared into the shadows, making his way back to the hospital. By the time he slipped back through his window, night had fully fallen. The hospital was quiet, the staff making their rounds elsewhere. Naruto lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling as he processed everything that had happened. Ashborn, he whispered, this power, will it change who I am? All power changes its wielder, came the reply. The question is whether you will master it, or it will master you. I won't let it turn me into something I'm not, Naruto declared. I became strong to protect my precious people, not to rule over others. Perhaps. But remember, young monarch, a king without subjects is merely a man with a crown. Naruto frowned at the cryptic response. I don't need subjects. I need friends, allies. Then perhaps that is how you should view your shadows, not as servants, but as allies who have pledged themselves to your cause. The concept was easier for Naruto to accept. Throughout his life, he had sought acknowledgement, connection. The idea of commanding loyal soldiers felt too close to the loneliness he had always fought against. Tomorrow, he decided, I'll test these abilities properly. Understand their limits, and their potential, Ashborn added. Sleep now, young monarch. Your reign has only just begun. As Naruto drifted toward sleep, his mind filled with images of shadow soldiers standing at his command, a legion born from darkness yet serving the light. And among those imagined allies stood real faces, Hinata, Sakura, Sasuke, and all the others he had come to care for. Whatever this power was, whatever it might make of him, Naruto swore to himself that he would use it to protect those bonds. The path of the Shadow Monarch might begin in solitude. But Naruto Uzumaki had never been good at following predetermined paths. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries. But for tonight, the future Shadow Monarch slept, his dreams guarded by a tiger made of darkness with eyes that glowed like blue fire. Naruto woke before dawn, a habit he'd never possessed before. The hospital room was quiet, moonlight still streaming through the window. He sat up, feeling no pain or weakness from his previous injuries, only a cool, steady strength flowing through his veins. The system accelerates healing, Ashborn informed him. Another benefit of your new power. Naruto swung his legs over the side of the bed. I need to understand more about how this works. What exactly can I do now? Access your status window. Think of it as a report on your current abilities. Following the instruction, Naruto focused, and information appeared in his mind. Status: Naruto Uzumaki, Class: Shadow Monarch, Awakening Stage, Level 1, Shadows Extracted. 1 Tiger, Available Skills. Shadow Extraction, Active. Shadow Storage, Passive. Enhanced Physical Abilities, Passive. Awakening Stage. Naruto questioned. The beginning of your journey. As you grow stronger and claim more shadows, you will evolve. And these skills. Shadow Extraction allows you to claim the shadows of the defeated. Shadow Storage lets you store your army within your own shadow. Enhanced Physical Abilities grants you strength, speed, and resilience beyond normal human limits. Naruto flexed his hand, remembering how easily he had defeated the attackers last night. How much stronger am I? Quote, currently, perhaps 3 times your previous strength without the Nine Tails chakra. But this is merely the foundation. With each worthy shadow you claim, your potential increases. A sudden thought occurred to Naruto. What about my chakra? My jutsu. Your chakra has been altered by the system, but not replaced. Your techniques should still function, perhaps with interesting variations. Curious. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he whispered. A clone appeared beside the bed, but unlike his usual clones, this one seemed different. Its edges were slightly darker, as if outlined in shadow, and its eyes had a faint blue glow. Whoa, both Narutos said simultaneously. Naruto reached out to touch the clone, half expecting his hand to pass through it. Instead, his fingers met solid form, cooler than a normal clone, but undeniably physical. Are you, like a shadow soldier? He asked his doppelganger. The clone tilted its head, considering. I don't think so. I'm still you, your thoughts, your memories. But I can feel the shadow energy flowing through me. Naruto dismissed the clone, watching as it dissolved into particles of darkness that rejoined his shadow. That could be useful. Indeed, your existing abilities will evolve as you grow more accustomed to the system. A soft knock interrupted their conversation. The door opened to reveal a nurse. Surprised to find Naruto awake so early. Uzumaki-san, how are you feeling? Great, actually, Naruto replied truthfully. When can I leave? The nurse checked his chart. Lady Tsunade left orders that you're to remain under observation for at least 3 days. Naruto groaned inwardly. 3 days confined to a hospital bed would drive him crazy, especially now that he was bursting with new energy and questions about his abilities. But, the nurse continued, she also said you could have visitors whenever you want, and use the hospital's private training yard if you're feeling up to it. That was something, at least. Thanks, I might take a walk later. After the nurse left, Naruto stood and stretched, testing his body. Every movement felt fluid, precise, as if he had complete control over each muscle fiber. You should continue your training in private, Ashbourne suggested. The Shadow Tiger is but a small sample of what you could command. I need to talk to someone first, Naruto decided. Someone who might understand what's happening to me. After dressing in fresh clothes that someone had left for him, a simple black t-shirt and orange pants and his usual jumpsuit, Naruto made his way through the hospital corridors. Rather than heading for the training yard, he took a different turn, toward a section of the hospital he'd visited many times before. Sasuke Uchiha was sitting up in bed when Naruto entered, his left arm bandaged but otherwise appearing unharmed from their mission. You're awake, Sasuke observed coolly. They wouldn't tell us anything about your condition. I'm fine. Better than fine, Naruto replied, closing the door behind him. What about you and Sakura? Minor injuries. Nothing serious. Sasuke's dark eyes studied him intently. But something's different about you. Leave it to Sasuke to notice immediately. The Uchiha's perceptiveness had always been sharp, even without activating his Sharingan. Yeah, Naruto admitted, taking a seat beside the bed. Something happened out there. Something big. Sasuke waited silently for him to continue. The Nine Tails chakra is gone, Naruto said finally. Or rather, it's been transformed. I have a different power now. Transformed how? Sasuke's voice remained neutral, but Naruto could see interest kindling in his eyes. It's called the Shadow Monarch system. I can extract shadows from defeated enemies and turn them into soldiers under my command. Each shadow I claim makes me stronger. Sasuke's eyebrows rose slightly, the Uchiha equivalent of shocked disbelief. Show me. Naruto glanced toward the door, ensuring they were alone, then extended his shadow toward his own. To Sasuke's visible surprise, Naruto's shadow stretched across the floor, merging With Sasuke's for a moment before retreating. I could have extracted your shadow if you were defeated, Naruto explained. But I'd never do that to a friend. Sasuke's expression remained carefully neutral. This power, is it like a Kekkei Genkai? Not exactly. It's a system that was given to me. There's an entity that guides me. His name is Ashbourne, the previous Shadow Monarch. Given by whom? Sasuke's suspicion was evident. Naruto hesitated. I'm not entirely sure. When I was dying from that poison, someone or something offered me a choice. This power in exchange for the Nine Tails chakra. And you accepted without knowing the consequences. There was a hint of the old condescension in Sasuke's voice. I was dying, Naruto reminded him. And I'm tired of being hated for something I never chose to begin with. That silenced Sasuke's criticism. Of all people, he understood what it meant to be defined by powers and circumstances beyond one's control. Does Kakashi know? Sasuke asked after a moment. He knows something's changed, but not exactly what. Same with Granny Tsunade and Pervy Sage. Naruto leaned forward. I wanted to tell you first because, well, you know what it's like to suddenly have power that others might fear. Sasuke's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. Despite their rivalry, a bond of understanding had always existed between them, both orphans, but burdened with abilities that set them apart. Be careful, Naruto, Sasuke said finally. Power always comes with a price. Especially power that seems to be given freely. I know, but this feels different from the Nine Tails. I'm in control, not fighting for it constantly. Sasuke nodded slowly. Just don't lose yourself to it. That's the real danger of great power, not what others might do to you because of it, but what you might become because of it. Coming from Sasuke, who had always been tempted by shortcuts to strength, the warning carried significant weight. I won't, Naruto promised. That's why I'm telling you. I need people who'll tell me if I start changing for the worse. A ghost of a smile crossed Sasuke's face. Like you've done for me. Their conversation was interrupted by the door opening. Sakura entered, carrying a small basket of fruit. She stopped short when she saw Naruto. You're awake, she exclaimed, setting down the basket and rushing to inspect him with a medic's critical eye. How are you feeling? They wouldn't let anyone but Hinata see you yesterday. I'm okay, Sakura. Really? Naruto submitted to her examination with unusual patience. Your chakra feels, wait. She stepped back, green eyes widening. It's completely different. What happened to the Nine Tails chakra? Naruto glanced at Sasuke, who nodded slightly. Taking a deep breath, Naruto explained his transformation again. This time leaving out certain details like his midnight encounter with the would-be kidnappers. Sakura listened with growing amazement. So you can create an army of shadows. That's incredible, and a little terrifying, she admitted. I've only tried it once, with a dead tiger in the forest of death, Naruto told her. I need to practice more to understand what I can really do. Well, don't practice on any of us, Sakura said with a nervous laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Naruto's face fell. This was exactly what he'd feared, that his friends would look at him differently. Maybe even with fear. Seeing his expression, Sakura quickly backtracked. I didn't mean it like that. It's a lot to take in. But you're still Naruto. Whatever power you have doesn't change who you are. Quote. Her words echoed Hinata's from the previous night, and Naruto felt a surge of gratitude for both Kunoichi. Thanks, Sakura, he said quietly. So what now? She asked, looking between him and Sasuke. Are you going to tell Lady Tsunade everything? Eventually, Naruto decided. But first, I need to understand this power better. I don't want to be treated like some kind of experiment or threat. Quote. The private training yard, Sasuke suggested. It's enclosed, monitored only by Anbu loyal to the Hokage. You could practice there without raising too many questions. It was a good suggestion. The hospital's training yard was designed for recovering shinobi to test their healing bodies without straining them, private enough for Naruto's purposes. Will you come? Naruto asked them both. I could use some feedback. And honestly, I'd feel better having friends around while I test this. Sasuke nodded. As soon as they discharge me. Probably this afternoon. I'll be there, Sakura promised. And I can bring some medical equipment to monitor your chakra levels. That might help us understand what's happening. For the first time since his transformation, Naruto felt genuinely optimistic. Having his teammates' support meant more than they could know. As they made plans for their training session, none of them noticed the small insect perched on the windowsill. Its compound eyes fixed on Naruto. Several buildings away, Shino Aburame stood motionless as information flowed back to him through his chakra connection with the reconnaissance insect. His expression, as always, remained hidden behind his high collar and dark glasses. Interesting, he murmured to himself. Very interesting indeed. The hospital's private training yard was a walled garden nestled between the main building and the eastern wall. Tall trees provided shade and privacy, while seals embedded in the stone walls prevented chakra from being detected outside. It was late afternoon by the time Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura gathered there. Okay, Naruto said, standing in the center of the yard. I'm going to try summoning the Shadow Tiger first. Sasuke and Sakura watched intently from the edge of the yard. Sakura had brought a small medical device that monitored chakra flow, while Sasuke had activated his Sharingan to observe the new technique. Here goes nothing, Naruto muttered. He closed his eyes and focused on his shadow, feeling the cool energy within it. Rise, he commanded silently. His shadow darkened and stretched across the ground. Black particles swirled upward, coalescing into the form of the shadow tiger. It stood beside Naruto, massive and imposing, its blue eyes gleaming in the afternoon light. Incredible, Sakura whispered, the monitor in her hand beeping rapidly. Your chakra signature is fluctuating, but it's stabilizing around a new baseline. Sasuke leaned forward, his Sharingan tracking the flow of energy. It's not like any jutsu I've seen before. The shadow isn't an illusion or a transformation, it's an actual entity with its own chakra network, connected to yours. Naruto nodded. The shadow tiger felt like an extension of himself, responsive to his thoughts. He directed it to circle the training yard, marveling at how fluidly it moved. Can it attack? Sasuke asked. I think so. Naruto pointed to a training dummy at the far end of the yard. Attack, he thought, and the shadow tiger launched itself forward with startling speed. Its claws tore through the dummy as if it were made of paper rather than reinforced canvas. Tuffing flew everywhere as the dummy was reduced to shreds in seconds. Sakura swallowed. That's a lot more powerful than I expected. Naruto commanded the shadow tiger to return to his side. It seems to retain all the strength it had in life, maybe more. Can you summon anything else? Sasuke asked. Or is it just the tiger for now? Just the tiger. I need to defeat more enemies to extract their shadows. Defeat is in. Quote. Sakura left the question hanging. Kill, Naruto admitted reluctantly. At least, that's how it's worked so far. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. The implications were troubling. To grow stronger, Naruto would need to defeat powerful opponents, taking their shadows as his own. You can extract shadows from those who die in your presence, even I. You are not directly responsible for their defeat, Ashbourne's voice suggested within Naruto's mind. But the connection is stronger when you claim victory yourself. I need to try something else, Naruto said suddenly. Sasuke, can you spar with me? Nothing serious, just testing my physical abilities. Sasuke hesitated only briefly before nodding. He stepped into the center of the yard, taking a defensive stance. No Sharingan, Naruto requested. Just taijutsu. Fine by me. They circled each other cautiously. Normally, Sasuke would have the advantage in pure taijutsu. His movements had always been more precise. More calculated than Naruto's brawling style. But as they began to exchange blows, it quickly became apparent that something had changed. Naruto moved with a fluid grace he'd never possessed before. His strikes were faster, his reactions sharper. He blocked Sasuke's punch and countered with a sweep that nearly took the Uchiha off his feet. Sasuke jumped back, reassessing. Your speed has increased significantly. Not just speed, Naruto realized. He felt stronger, more balanced, as if every muscle in his body was working in perfect harmony. Everything's enhanced. They continued the spar, their movements becoming faster and more intense as Sasuke pushed harder and Naruto responded in kind. Within minutes, both were breathing heavily, but Naruto felt none of the fatigue he would normally experience. Enough, Sakura called finally, looking at her monitor with concern. Naruto, your chakra consumption is minimal despite the enhanced physical output. That's not normal. Naruto and Sasuke separated, both sweating but only one of them truly winded. It's the system, Naruto explained. Ashbourne says my physical abilities are enhanced as a passive skill. Ashbourne, Sakura questioned. You're talking to this entity. He guides me in using the system, Naruto said defensively. He was the previous Shadow Monarch. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged concerned glances. What? Naruto demanded. It's just. Sakura hesitated. It sounds a bit like when you used to talk about the Nine Tails influencing you. This is different, Naruto insisted. The Nine Tails was sealed inside me against both our wills. It hated me, wanted to take control. Ashbourne is more like a teacher. A fair assessment, Ashbourne commented. Though I am more than merely a teacher. I am the system itself. And you are my chosen successor. Can you try creating shadow clones again? Sasuke suggested. changing the subject. You mentioned they might be different now. Grateful for the redirection, Naruto formed the familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Instead of the usual puff of smoke, dark particles swirled around him. When they cleared, 5 shadow-infused clones stood in formation, their eyes carrying the same faint blue glow that the tiger possessed. Whoa, all 6 Narutos said in unison. Sakura approached one of the clones cautiously, her medical scanner extended. These are much more substantial than your normal clones. Their chakra signatures are nearly identical to yours. Let's test their durability, Sasuke suggested, drawing a kunai. One of the clones stepped forward, offering its arm. Sasuke made a shallow cut, and instead of disappearing in a puff of smoke, the clone merely winced. Dark particles swirled around the wound, sealing it almost immediately. They can heal, Naruto realized. And they don't dispel from a single hit anymore. That's a significant advantage in combat, Sasuke noted. Your clones were always useful, but fragile. Naruto dismissed the clones, watching as they dissolved into particles that rejoined his shadow. A notification appeared in his mind. Shadow Clone technique has evolved to Dark Clone. Clones now possess enhanced durability and limited regeneration. The system says my Shadow Clone technique has evolved, he informed the others. It's called Dark Clone now. Sakura frowned at her monitor. Your chakra usage for creating them was also much lower than it used to be. With the 9 tails, you had massive reserves but poor control. Now it seems you have both efficiency and power. Naruto was about to respond, when he felt a strange sensation, a pull similar to what had led him to the dead tiger, but stronger, more insistent. Something's happening, he said, turning toward the source of the pull. It was coming from beyond the hospital walls. Somewhere in the village. Sasuke tensed. What is it? I don't know. It feels like death. But stronger than before. Naruto moved toward the wall, drawn by the sensation. I need to check this out. Wait, Sakura called. We should inform Lady Tsunade first. But Naruto was already scaling the wall, his enhanced strength making the climb effortless. At the top, he paused, looking back at his concerned teammates. I'll be careful, he promised. But I need to understand what this power is sensing. Without waiting for a response, he dropped down the oath. Sighed and began moving through the village, following the pull. It led him toward the southern gate, growing stronger with each step. As he approached, he noticed a commotion, shinobi rushing toward the gate, medical teams being assembled. What's happening? He asked a passing Chunin. Ambush, the man replied grimly. A patrol was attacked just outside the village. Multiple casualties. The pull intensified, drawing Naruto toward the gates. He slipped through the gathering crowd, using his enhanced speed to avoid being noticed. Outside the gates, a grim scene awaited him. 4 bodies lay covered with sheets, while medics worked desperately on 2 more wounded shinobi. The attackers, whoever they had been, were gone, presumably driven off by reinforcements. The pull Naruto felt was coming from the covered bodies. He approached cautiously, drawing curious glances from the medical ninja. Naruto, a familiar voice called. What are you doing here? Shizune hurried over, her expression a mixture of surprise and concern. You should be in the hospital under observation. I heard about the attack, Naruto said, not entirely untruthfully. What happened? Shizune sighed, glancing back at the bodies. Patrol ran into a group of missing nin. These 4 didn't make it. Her voice dropped. They were drained of chakra, some kind of technique we haven't seen before. Worthy shadows, Ashbourne whispered in Naruto's mind. Fallen warriors who gave their lives defending what they believed in. Perfect additions to your army. Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't anonymous enemies are wild animals. They were Konoha shinobi, people who had lived and died for the same village he had sworn to protect. I can't take their shadows, he thought back fiercely. It would be wrong. Why? Ashbourne questioned. In death, they could continue to serve their village through you. Is that not a greater honor than rotting in the ground? The logic was cold but compelling. Would these fallen shinobi choose eternal rest? Or the chance to continue protecting their home, even in death? Naruto. Shizune was looking at him strangely. Are you all right? You seem different. Before he could respond, a commotion broke out near one of the wounded ninja. The medics' voices became urgent, their movements frantic. "We're losing him," one called. Shizune rushed over, leaving Naruto standing alone near the covered bodies. He watched as she poured healing chakra into the injured shinobi, fighting to save his life. Despite their efforts, Naruto could sense the man's life force ebbing away. The moment of death was palpable to Naruto's new senses, a release of energy, a final exhalation that carried with it the essence of who the person had been. And with that release came the strongest pull yet, a beckoning that was almost impossible to resist. "This one died before you," Ashbourne noted. "His shadow is yours for the taking, if you choose." Time seemed to slow as Naruto struggled with the decision. Would extracting this shinobi's shadow dishonor him, or give him a way to continue his service? Would the others see it as a desecration or a tribute? In the end, instinct guided him. His shadow stretched subtly across the ground, touching the body of the fallen ninja. Black particles rose, invisible to all but Naruto, and flowed into his shadow. The process took only seconds, and none of the distracted medical team noticed. Shadow extraction successful. Konoha Chunin shadow added to army. The notification appeared in Naruto's mind, accompanied by a rush of information about his new Hado soldier, a Chunin named Takeo Inuzuka, skilled in tracking and close combat, killed in action at age 26. A wave of guilt washed over Naruto, followed by a strange sense of responsibility. He had taken something precious, something that should not be taken lightly. "You honor him," Ashbourne assured him. "His skills will now serve your cause." "But what is my cause?" Naruto wondered. "Naruto." Shizune's voice broke through his thoughts. She had returned, her expression somber. "We lost him. There was nothing we could do." Naruto nodded silently, unable to tell her that in some way, the shinobi would live on. "You should return to the hospital," she continued. "Lady Tsunade will want to check your condition, especially with everything that's happening." "What do you mean?" Shizune hesitated. "There have been reports of unusual attacks around the borders of Fire Country. Shinobi and civilians alike, drained of chakra. Lady Tsunade suspects it might be connected to what happened to you on your mission." The information sent a chill through Naruto. Could his transformation be related to these attacks? Was someone, or something, hunting for more potential shadow monarchs? "I'll head back now," he promised Shizune. "And I'll tell Granny Tsunade everything I know." As he turned to leave, he sensed movement in his shadow, the new addition adjusting to its place in his growing army. It came a sense of the Chunin's memories, fragmented but revealing, glimpses of the attackers, figures wrapped in dark cloaks with glowing blue eyes. Eyes like those of his shadow soldiers. "We are not alone," Ashbourne observed. "There are others who seek the power of shadows." The realization was both comforting and troubling. Naruto was not unique in his transformation, but that meant there were others out there with similar abilities. Perhaps with very different intentions than his own. As he made his way back to the hospital, a new resolve formed within him. He would master this power, not for domination or conquest, but to protect his village from whatever threat was emerging from the shadows. When Naruto returned to the hospital, he found Tsunade waiting in his room, her arms crossed and her expression thunderous. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "You're supposed to be under observation." "I was at the south gate," Naruto admitted. "I heard about the attack." Tsunade's anger gave way to concern. "How are you feeling? Any unusual symptoms or sensations?" Naruto took a deep breath. The time for secrecy had passed. "Actually, yes, that's what I need to talk to you about." Over the next hour, Naruto explained everything. The stranger's offer, the transformation of the Nine Tails chakra, Ashbourne, the shadow soldiers, even his extraction of the fallen Chunin's shadow. Tsunade listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "Let me see if I understand correctly," she said when he finished. "You've basically traded the Nine Tails for a different power source. One that allows you to command the shadows of the deceased. That's the simplified version, yeah." Tsunade pinched the bridge of her nose. "And you didn't think to mention this immediately because I needed to understand it first," Naruto defended. "And I was afraid of how people would react. Being the Nine Tails Jinchuriki was bad enough. Being able to raise the dead, that's a whole other level of creepy." "They're not really raised," Tsunade corrected. "From what you've described, you're creating shadow constructs that retain the abilities and memories of the deceased. It's more like a very advanced summoning technique. Her analytical approach surprised Naruto. He had expected disgust, fear, or at least strong caution. You're not freaked out by this. A tired smile crossed Tsunade's face. Naruto, in my lifetime I've seen people brought back from the dead with impure world reincarnation, witnessed the destruction of entire villages by tailed beasts, and fought in wars where jutsu beyond imagination were commonplace. Your shadow army is unusual, but not unprecedented. Relief washed through Naruto. So I'm not a monster. Tsunade's expression softened. You never were. She leaned forward. But this power needs to be understood and controlled. The attacks at our borders concern me, especially if they're related to your transformation. Ichunen's memories showed figures with glowing blue eyes, Naruto told her. Like my shadow soldiers. Then it's possible we're dealing with another shadow monarch, or something similar. Tsunade stood, pacing the small room. I'm assembling a team to investigate these border incidents. Given what you've told me, I think you should be part of it. Naruto blinked in surprise. You want me on the team, even though I'm still figuring out these powers. Precisely because you're figuring them out, Tsunade corrected. You have insight no one else possesses. Besides, if there are others with similar abilities out there, you might be our best defense against them. The vote of confidence meant more to Naruto than Tsunade could know. After years of being viewed as a liability because of the Nine Tails, being valued for his new power was a welcome change. When do we leave? He asked. Tomorrow morning. I'll brief the full team tonight. Tsunade moved toward the door. Get some rest, and be ready to depart at dawn. After she left, Naruto lay back on his bed, processing everything. A mission to investigate attacks that might be related to his new powers. It was a chance to test his ability. IEs in the field while serving the village. A wise decision, Ashbourne commented. Confronting these shadow users will accelerate your growth. And maybe provide answers, Naruto added silently. Like YT, his power was given to me in the first place. As night fell over Konoha, Naruto stood at his hospital window, looking out at the village he had sworn to protect. His shadow stretched long across the floor, now housing 2 soldiers where yesterday it had held none. Whatever comes, he promised quietly, I'll use this power to protect them. That's my ninja way. In the darkness of his shadow, blue eyes gleamed in silent acknowledgement of his vow. Dawn broke clear and cool over Konoha as Naruto waited at the village gates. He had been discharged from the hospital the previous evening with strict instructions to report any unusual developments in his condition. Now, dressed in a new outfit, black pants, a dark orange jacket, and a mesh undershirt, he adjusted the ninja tools in his pouch while waiting for the rest of the team. Sasuke arrived first, nodding silently in greeting. He had been briefed on the mission and, despite his recent injuries, had insisted on joining. His knowledge of obscure jutsu and analytical mind would be valuable. Nervous? He asked Naruto. A little, Naruto admitted. This is the first real test of these powers in the field. Just don't get carried away, Sasuke cautioned. New abilities can be intoxicating. Before Naruto could respond, a soft voice called his name. Hinata approached, her pack neatly arranged on her shoulders. Hinata, you're on the team too. She nodded, a new confidence in her stance. Lady Tsunade thought my Byakugan would be useful for tracking chakra signatures. And, she hesitated briefly, she thought I might be able to help monitor your new chakra network. Naruto smiled, genuinely pleased. That's great. I feel better having you along. A faint blush colored Hinata's cheeks, but her gaze remained steady. In the why since he'd saved her from the attackers, something had shifted between them, a new understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of something deeper. Are we ready for a mission, or is this a social gathering? Sakura's voice broke through as she joined them, medical pack slung over one shoulder. Both, I hope, came another voice, deeper and more reserved. Naruto turned to see Shino Aburame approaching, his high collar and dark glasses hiding most of his expression as usual. Shino, you're coming too. My insects are sensitive to unusual chakra patterns, Shino explained in his methodical way. Also, one of my reconnaissance insects observed your training yesterday. I am Intrigued by your transformation. Naruto shot a surprised look at Sasuke and Sakura, who shrugged. Neither had noticed Shino's insect during their training session. Well, that makes 5 of us, Naruto counted. Is anyone else joining? Just me, said a familiar drawling voice. Shikamaru Nara yawned as he strolled up to the group. Though why Lady Tsunade thinks we need a 6-person team for a reconnaissance mission is beyond me. So troublesome. Because it's not just reconnaissance, came Tsunade's voice as she approached the gates. It's potentially first contact with a new type of enemy, one with abilities we've never encountered before. The young shinobi straightened as their Hokage briefed them one final time. Your mission has 3 objectives. Investigate the attacks along our eastern border, determine if they're connected to Naruto's transformation, and if possible, capture one of these shadow users for questioning. Tsunade's amber eyes swept over each of them. Shikamaru will be team leader, with Sasuke as second in command. Naruto nodded, understanding the logic. Shikamaru's strategic mind and Sasuke's combat experience made them natural leaders. Your primary destination is Tanzaku Town, Tsunade continued. 3 attacks have been reported in that area, the most recent just 2 days ago. Start there, gather information, and proceed according to what you discover. And if we encounter these shadow users? Shikamaru asked. Engage only if necessary, and with extreme caution. Priority is on intelligence gathering and, if possible, capturing one for interrogation. Tsunade's gaze lingered on Naruto. And Naruto, this is an opportunity to test your new abilities in controlled conditions. Don't overextend yourself. Understood, Granny, Naruto replied with unusual seriousness. With final instructions given, the team set out. As they traveled through the forests surrounding Konoha, Naruto felt a sense of anticipation building within him. This wasn't just a mission. It was a journey of discovery, both of his new powers and of the mysterious forces that had granted them. The team traveled swiftly, moving through the trees with the practiced ease of Konoha shinobi. Hinata and Shino took point, using their specialized abilities to scan for threats, while Sasuke and Naruto flanked the group. Sakura stayed in the center, ready to provide medical support if needed, and Shikamaru brought up the rear, his sharp mind constantly analyzing their formation and surroundings. As they moved, Naruto felt a subtle change in his awareness. His senses seemed sharper, more attuned to the shadows cast by the forest canopy. He could feel the life force of small animals as they passed. The steady pulse of his teammates' chakra, and something else, distant but growing stronger as they traveled east. There's something ahead, he said suddenly, causing the group to pause on a wide branch. I can sense death. Recent death. Hinata activated her Byakugan, veins bulging around her pale eyes. 3 kilometers ahead, slightly north of our route. I see bodies. At least 4 of them, near a small clearing. Shikamaru frowned. It could be related to the attacks we're investigating. Change course. We'll check it out. They adjusted their path, moving more cautiously now. As they approached the clearing, the sensation grew stronger in Naruto's mind, the pull of potential shadows waiting to be claimed. Remain alert, Ashbourne warned within his thoughts. This feels like a deliberate act, not a random attack. Naruto relayed the warning to his teammates as they reached the edge of the clearing. The scene before them confirmed his suspicions. 4 bodies lay arranged in a precise pattern, forming a square. They appeared to be civilians, perhaps merchants based on their clothing. This is ritualistic, Sasuke observed, his Sharingan activated as he scanned the area. They've been positioned deliberately. Shino extended his hand, allowing several insects to scatter across the clearing. There are traces of unusual chakra here. My insects are repelled by it. Sakura knelt beside one of the bodies, her medical training overcoming her natural revulsion. Same as the reports from the border, completely drained of chakra. But there's something else. She pointed to a small, black mark on the victim's neck. Some kind of seal or brand. Naruto approached, drawn by the pull of the shadows. As he neared the first body, the sensation intensified, but something felt wrong, tainted. Do not extract these shadows, Ashbourne commanded with unusual urgency. They have been corrupted. There's something wrong with their essence, Naruto told the others. Ashbourne says they've been corrupted somehow. Ashbourne, Shikamaru questioned. The entity that guides me in using the Shadow Monarch system, Naruto explained briefly. He says I shouldn't extract these shadows. Hinata moved to Naruto's side. Her Byakugan still active. Their chakra networks are strange. It's as if something was inserted into them before death, like a foreign energy. A trap, perhaps, Shikamaru mused. If these shadow users know about Naruto's abilities, they might have left these bodies as bait. The possibility sent a chill through the group. If they were being targeted specifically because of Naruto's transformation, this mission had just become considerably more dangerous. We should. Sasuke began, then tensed. Someone's coming. Multiple signatures, moving fast. Positions. Shikamaru barked, and the team scattered to defensive locations around the clearing. Naruto crouched behind a large tree, his senses straining. He could feel them now. 6 figures approaching from the north. Their chakra signatures felt wrong somehow, cold and hollow. They are shadow constructs, Ashbourne informed him. But different from yours. Darker, twisted. The first figure emerged from the trees opposite their position, a man in tattered clothing, moving with an unnatural gait. His eyes glowed blue, but unlike the clear light of Naruto's shadows, this was a sickly, pulsing illumination. 5 more figures followed, similarly disheveled and moving with the same jerky motions. They surrounded the bodies in the clearing, then began performing hand signs in perfect unison. They're conducting some kind of ritual, Hinata whispered through their communication devices. The chakra flow is feeding into the bodies. We need to stop them, Naruto decided. Whatever they're doing, it can't be good. Shikamaru gave the signal, and the Konoha shinobi burst from their hiding places, surrounding the shadow constructs. The constructs turned as one, their glowing eyes fixing on the newcomers. For a moment, nobody moved. Then one of the constructs pointed directly at Naruto. Shadow Monarch. The voice was dry and hollow, like wind through dead leaves. Give essence. They can talk. Sakura gasped. Not for long, Sasuke replied grimly, drawing his sword. The constructs attacked with surprising speed, their movements no longer jerky but fluid and coordinated. Each targeted a different member of the team, except for their leader, who made straight for Naruto. You, false monarch, it hissed. Power. Not yours. Naruto dodged its first strike, a clawed hand that left gouges in the tree behind him. Who sent you? He demanded. Who created you? The construct didn't respond, pressing its attack with increasing ferocity. Around the clearing, his teammates engaged the other shadow beings. Sasuke's sword sliced through one, only for the construct to reform around the blade. Hinata's gentle fist strikes passed through another as if it were made of smoke. Physical attacks aren't working, Shikamaru called out. Try chakra-based techniques. Naruto summoned a Rasengan, the swirling ball of chakra forming in his palm. But as he did, he felt his own shadow pulse with energy. Use your shadows, Ashbourne urged. Only a shadow monarch can truly destroy another's constructs. Without hesitation, Naruto called forth his shadow soldiers. The tiger and the Chunin emerged from his shadow, their blue eyes gleaming with righteous purpose compared to the sickly light of the enemy constructs. What the? Shikamaru's exclamation was cut short as he dodged an attack. The shadow tiger roared, the sound echoing unnaturally through the clearing, and launched itself at the nearest enemy construct. Its claws tore through the shadow being, dispersing its form into particles that did not reform. The shadow Chunin moved with practiced efficiency, engaging 2 constructs at once. His fighting style was distinctly Inuzuka, swift and ferocious even without a Ninken partner. Naruto faced the leader construct, his Rasengan still spinning in his palm. Now that his own shadows were engaged, he could sense a connection between this construct and the others, a network of control similar to his own. But twisted, forced. Who is your master? Naruto demanded again. The construct's face twisted in what might have been a smile. The true monarch comes for you. It lunged forward, directly into Naruto's Rasengan. The spiraling chakra tore through its chest, but instead of dispersing, the construct grabbed Naruto's arm, its clawed fingers digging into his flesh. Your shadows will join us. Quote. Pain lanced through Naruto's arm as he felt something cold attempting to infiltrate his chakra network. His vision blurred, the world narrowing to the construct. Quartz glowing eyes and the sensation of his energy being drained. Resist. Ashbourne's voice thundered in his mind. This is a shadow leech, it seeks to corrupt your system. With a cry of effort, Naruto channeled his chakra in a violent surge, forcing it through the connection between himself and the construct. The being's eyes widened as Naruto's energy, infused with the transformed Nine Tails chakra, flowed into it. What? Impossible, it gasped. I don't know who your master is, Naruto growled, but tell them the Shadow Monarch of Konoha isn't giving up his power to anyone. The construct convulsed as Naruto's chakra overwhelmed it, then exploded into particles of darkness that scattered on the wind. Around the clearing, the remaining enemy shadows dissipated as their controller's connection was severed. Silence fell as the Konoha shinobi regrouped, wary of another attack. Everyone okay? Shikamaru asked, checking his teammates. Sasuke nodded, sheathing his sword. What were those things? Shadow constructs, Naruto explained, cradling his injured arm. Like mine, but wrong somehow. Corrupted. Sakura approached to heal his wounds, her expression troubled. It said, the true monarch comes for you. What did that mean? I don't know, Naruto admitted. But I think whoever gave me this power isn't the only one with it. There's someone else out there, someone who thinks they're the rightful Shadow Monarch. And they want your power, Shino concluded. Logical, if they believe it was wrongfully given to you. Hinata, who had been examining the bodies with her Byakugan, called them over. The ritual was incomplete, but something has changed. The bodies are empty now. Even emptier than before, if that's possible. Naruto approached cautiously, no longer feeling the pull of potential shadows. Whatever essence might have remained in the deceased had been completely extracted, or destroyed. We need to report this to Lady Tsunade, Shikamaru decided. But we'll continue to Tanzaku Town as planned. If these shadow users are targeting Naruto, we need to find them before they find us again. As they prepared to move out, Naruto recalled his shadow soldiers. The Tig, and the Chunin returned to his shadow without protest, but not before the Chunin, Takeo, gave him a respectful nod. The simple gesture affected Naruto deeply. This wasn't just a construct or a tool, it was the essence of a fallen comrade. Choosing to serve even in death. I'll find answers, Naruto promised silently to his shadows. For all of us. The team resumed their journey, more alert now that they knew the nature of their enemy. As they traveled, Naruto felt a growing resolve hardening within him. Someone was using a corrupted version of his power to harm innocents, and they apparently saw him as a threat, or a prize to be claimed. If they wanted his power, they would have to face the true strength of the Shadow Monarch of Konoha. And Naruto Uzumaki never backed down from a challenge. Chapter 1 End. Shadow of the Maelstrom. Chapter 2. Shadows Rising. Tanzaku Town sprawled across the valley floor, a vibrant tapestry of lights and noise even in the late afternoon. Once known primarily for its gambling halls and castle ruins, the town had grown into a major trading hub since its reconstruction. Merchants and travelers from across the 5 great nations mingled in its busy streets, making it both an ideal hiding place and a target-rich environment for those with sinister intentions. From their vantage point on a nearby hillside, Naruto and his team observed the town's pulsing activity. The journey from the site of the ambush had been tense but uneventful, giving them time to process what they had encountered and plan their approach. We'll need to blend in, Shikamaru decided, studying the town through narrowed eyes. 6 shinobi moving together will attract unwanted attention. Agreed, Sasuke said. We should split into teams of 2, cover more ground while maintaining contact. Shikamaru nodded. Sasuke and I will investigate the most recent attack site. Sakura and Shino, check with local authorities and medical facilities, see if there are patterns to the victims or witnesses we haven't interviewed. Naruto and Hinata, canvass the market district, your sensory abilities might pick up traces of shadow energy. The assignments made sense. Hinata's Byakugan and Naruto's newfound sensitivity to shadow energy would make them an effective search team, while Sakura's medical expertise paired well with Shino's methodical investigation style. Sasuke and Shikamaru, both strategic thinkers, could analyze the attack site most effectively. We'll meet at the Jade Leaf Inn at sundown, Shikamaru continued. Maintain regular communication, and if you encounter anything suspicious, especially shadow constructs, do not engage alone. Call for backup immediately. With plans established, the team descended toward the town, separating at the outskirts to approach their designated areas from different directions. Naruto and Hinata adopted casual postures as they entered through the eastern gate, dressed in civilian clothes they had packed for undercover work. Naruto wore a simple black shirt and dark orange vest over gray pants, still acknowledging his favorite color but far less conspicuous than his usual outfit. Hinata had opted for a light lavender tunic over dark leggings, her ninja headband replaced by a plain cloth band that kept her hair from her face while still allowing her to activate her Byakugan discreetly. "Where should we start?" Hinata asked as EY merged with the crowd in the busy market street. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, extending his senses as Ashbourne had taught him during their journey. The presence of so many people made it difficult to isolate individual shadow signatures, but he could feel a general pattern to the energy flow of the town. "There's something off about the western section," he said finally, opening his eyes. "Not exactly shadow energy, but similar, like an echo." Hinata nodded. "I'll check." She turned slightly away from the crowd, activating her Byakugan with minimal movement. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "There's a disturbance in the chakra flow around a building about 5 blocks west. It looks like a tavern or meeting hall." They made their way through the market, maintaining their cover as tourists by occasionally stopping at stalls, even purchasing a couple of small items to blend in. Naruto found the pretense surprisingly easy. He had rarely had the opportunity to simply explore a town like this. And despite the seriousness of their mission, he couldn't help but enjoy the experience. "Try this," he said, offering Hinata a skewer of grilled dango he'd bought from a street vendor. "It smells amazing." Hinata accepted with a smile, her fingers brushing against his as she took the skewer. That small contact sent a curious sensation through Naruto's shadow, a warmth that contrasted with the cool energy he had come to associate with his powers. "She has a strong affinity for your energy," Ashbourne observed. "Unusual for someone who is not a shadow herself." "What does that mean?" Naruto questioned silently. "It means she could be more than merely an ally. Perhaps a conduit or amplifier for your abilities." The concept was intriguing but also concerning. Naruto didn't want to put Hinata at risk by entangling her with his still mysterious powers. "Is everything okay?" Hinata asked, noticing his distraction. "Yeah, just thinking about the mission." He gestured toward the western district. "We should keep moving." As they approached the building Hinata had identified, Naruto's sense of wrongness intensified. The structure itself seemed ordinary enough, a 2-story establishment called the Howling Wolf, with a faded sign depicting its namesake. But the shadows around it felt sticky somehow, as if they had been manipulated and left slightly misaligned. "Something happened here recently," Naruto murmured. "Some kind of shadow technique." Hinata activated her Byakugan again, scanning the building more thoroughly. "The disturbance is strongest in the back room on the first floor. There are 15 people inside, but their chakra networks are normal." "Let's check it out," Naruto decided. But casually, "We're just travelers looking for a drink and a meal." They entered the tavern, finding it moderately busy with a mix of locals and visitors. A central bar dominated the space, surrounded by scattered tables and booths along the walls. A staircase in the corner led to private rooms on the second floor, while a hallway beside it led toward the back of the building. "Two for dinner?" asked a server, approaching them with a tired smile. "Please," Hinata replied with a gentle politeness that seemed to soften the server's demeanor. They were led to a small table with a good view of both the main entrance and the hallway leading to the back room. After ordering drinks and a simple meal, they settled in to observe. "The back room has more activity now," Hinata reported quietly, her Byakugan active beneath her bangs. "People coming and going through what appears to be a concealed door." "Can you make out what they're doing?" She frowned in concentration. "It looks like a gambling operation. But there's something strange about the dealer. His chakra network is muted somehow." Naruto extended his senses toward the back room, focusing on the dealer Hinata had identified. The shadow signature was definitely abnormal, not a full construct like they had encountered in the forest. But not entirely human either. "A hybrid," Ashbourne suggested. A human partially infused with shadow essence. A servant of the shadow monarch you seek. The revelation was troubling. If their enemy could create not just constructs but human shadow hybrids, their capabilities were more advanced than Naruto had realized. We need to get a closer look, he decided. Can you see any way to access the back room without drawing attention? Hinata scanned the tavern again. There's a service corridor behind the bar. It connects to the kitchen, which has an entrance to the back room. Their food arrived, temporarily pausing their conversation. They ate quickly but not hurriedly, maintaining their cover while formulating a plan. I'll create a distraction, Naruto said after they had finished. Nothing flashy, just enough to draw attention away from the bar. You slip through the service corridor and get a better look at what's happening in that room. Hinata nodded, her earlier nervousness replaced by focused determination. This was the growth Naruto had glimpsed during the Chunin exams, a quiet strength that emerged when needed most. They put their plan into action. Naruto made his way to the far side of the tavern, then deliberately bumped into a large, intoxicated patron, causing the man to spill his drink. Watch where you're going, kid. The man growled, rising to his imposing height. Sorry, my mistake, Naruto replied with exaggerated contrition, while deliberately stepping on the man's foot. The resulting commotion, not quite a brawl, but loud enig. To capture everyone's attention, provided the perfect cover for Hinata to slip behind the bar and into the service corridor. Naruto managed to defuse the situation after a few minutes of verbal sparring and insincere apologies. Then returned to their table to wait. Hinata reappeared 7 minutes later, her expression troubled as she rejoined him. What did you see? He asked quietly. It's definitely a shadow user, she confirmed. The dealer appears human but has been infused with shadow essence, just as you suspected. He's extracting something from the gamblers, not taking their shadows completely, but skimming something from their chakra with each hand they lose. Harvesting energy, Naruto realized. Building up power gradually rather than through direct kills. There's more, Hinata continued. I overheard them talking about a gathering tonight, at the abandoned temple in the hills north of town. Something about preparing the vessel for their master's arrival. The information sent a chill through Naruto. We need to tell the others. This could be our chance to discover who's behind all this. They paid for their meal and left the tavern, moving at a casual pace until they were a safe distance away. Once clear, they ducked into an alley to contact the rest of the team through their communication devices. All units, this is Shadow Team, Naruto said, using their mission designations. We've located a shadow hybrid operating out of the Howling Wolf Tavern. Intel suggests a gathering tonight at the abandoned temple north of town. Understood, came Shikamaru's voice. We've found evidence of shadow activity at the attack site as well, residual energy consistent with what we encountered in the forest. Rendezvous at the inn immediately to plan our approach. The Jade Leaf Inn was a modest but clean establishment on the eastern edge of town, chosen for its private rear entrance and the fact that the owner was a former Konoha shinobi who maintained good relations with the village. The team gathered in a private dining room, secured by Shino's insects against eavesdropping. What we're dealing with appears to be a network, not just isolated incidents, Shikamaru began, spreading a map on the table. Based on our combined intelligence, shadow users have established operations in at least 3 locations in and around Tanzaku town. The tavern gambling ration is likely a means of gathering small amounts of chakra from multiple sources, Sasuke added. Less noticeable than the full extractions that left bodies behind. And according to medical records, there have been at least a dozen cases of unexplained chakra depletion treated at local clinics over the past month, Sakura reported. Non-fatal, but significant enough to require medical attention. My insects detected trace amounts of the same shadow energy at each attack site, Shino said. The pattern suggests a gradually expanding operation, becoming more aggressive over time. Naruto frowned, processing the information. So they started small, taking little bits of chakra from gamblers, then escalated to partial extractions that left victims alive but weakened, and now they're killing and taking complete shadows. It appears they're building toward something, Hinata said quietly. The gathering tonight, they mentioned, preparing the vessel for their master. Shikamaru tapped a location on the map. The abandoned temple is here, about 5 kilometers north of town. According to local records, it was dedicated to an ancient deity associated with the underworld, possibly relevant given the shadow connection. How do we approach? Sasuke asked, studying the terrain around the temple. We need to observe first, Shikamaru decided. Determine their numbers and capabilities before engaging. This gathering may draw in shadow users from across the region, giving us a better understanding of what we're facing. And if they're preparing for their master's arrival, we might finally discover who's behind all this. Naruto added. The plan came together quickly. They would approach the temple from multiple angles, establish observation posts, and gather intelligence on the gathering. Only if they discovered an immediate threat, such as a ritual sacrifice, would they intervene directly. Otherwise, their primary goal was identification and information gathering. As the others finalized details, Naruto stepped outside onto the inn's small balcony. The sun was setting over Tanzaku town, casting long shadows across the buildings and streets. He could feel those shadows now, in a way he never had before, not just as absences of light, but as extensions of a realm parallel to their own. Hinata joined him, her quiet presence a comfort amidst his troubled thoughts. Are you worried about tonight? She asked. Not about the mission, Naruto replied. I'm concerned about what we might learn. If there really is another shadow monarch out there, one who thinks I stole their power, what does that mean for me? For this system I've been given. Hinata considered his question carefully before responding. When you received this power, did it feel wrong? Like something taken rather than given? Naruto thought back to that rainy night, the stranger's offer, and his acceptance. No, it felt like a transformation. Like the Nine Tails chakra was being repurposed rather than replaced. Then perhaps that's your answer, Hinata suggested. Your path as the Shadow Monarch may be different from what others expected or intended, but that doesn't make it wrong. Her insight struck Naruto deeply. Throughout his life, he had forged his own path, defying expectations and redefining what it meant to be a Jinchuriki. Perhaps this new power was no different, not a role to fill, but a path to create. Thanks, Hinata, he said, smiling genuinely. You always know how to clear things up. She returned his smile, a faint blush coloring her cheeks in the fading light. It's a sight to see clearly when looking at someone who shines so brightly, even as the Shadow Monarch. The paradox made Naruto laugh, easing the tension that had been building within him. As they stood together watching the gathering darkness, he felt his shadow stir slightly, reaching toward hers as if seeking connection. Curious, Ashbourne commented, your shadows recognize something in her, a resonance. Rare, but not unprecedented. Before Naruto could question further, Shikamaru called them back inside. The time had come to prepare for their mission to the temple. Night had fully descended by the time they reached the foothills north of Tanzaku town. The abandoned temple was visible in the distance, an imposing silhouette against the starry sky. Ancient stone pillars flanked a central structure that had partially collapsed over time, creating a maze of broken walls and exposed chambers. More concerning than the temple's dilapidated state was the activity Naruto could sense even from a distance, shadow energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Stronger than anything he had encountered since his transformation. There are at least 20 shadow signatures, he reported as the team gathered in a small clearing for final coordination. Most are hybrids like the dealer, but a few feel like full constructs. And there's something else, something deeper in the temple that feels old. Really old. My insects are agitated, Shino added. The concentration of shadow energy is affecting them negatively. Shikamaru nodded, taking in the information. We'll maintain our observation plan, but with heightened caution. Naruto, your ability to sense shadow energy makes you our best early warning system, but it might also make you a target if they can sense you in return. They shouldn't be able to, Naruto replied, though without complete confidence. Ashbourne says my shadow signature is different from theirs, transformed by the Nine Tails chakra. Nevertheless, caution is warranted, Sasuke said. We're dealing with an unknown enemy with abilities similar to yours. Assume they have capabilities we haven't seen yet. The team split into 3 pairs as planned. Shikamaru and Shino would observe from the eastern approach. Sasuke and Sakura from the west, while Naruto and Hinata would take the more direct southern route, using her Byakugan to monitor the interior of the temple. Moving silently through the forested hillside, Naruto and Hinata reached their observation position, a dense copse of trees with a clear view of the temple's main entrance. Shadowy figures moved in and out of the structure, carrying items that glowed faintly with an unnatural blue light. There are 33 people inside the temple now, Hinata reported, her Byakugan active. 27 appear to be partially infused with shadow essence, while 6 are full constructs. They're arranging some kind of ritual circle in the central chamber. Naruto extended his senses, focusing on the shadow signatures. E-hybrid humans felt wrong, like natural shadows that had been twisted, forced to accommodate foreign energy. The constructs were even worse, empty vessels animated by corrupted shadow essence. These are not true shadows. Ashbourne's voice echoed in his mind. They are imitations, created through sacrifice rather than honorable combat. Perversions of the true Shadow Monarch system. There's something in the center of the ritual circle. Hinata continued. A container of some kind, filled with, it looks like liquid shadow. And they're bringing in civilians, 5 of them, bound and unconscious. Alarm surged through Naruto. They're going to sacrifice them, he realized. We need to intervene now. He reached for his communication device to alert the others, but before he could activate it, a old voice spoke from directly behind them. The false monarch graces us with his presence. How predictable. Naruto and Hinata spun to face the intruder, a tall, slender figure in elaborate robes, air face concealed by a mask carved to resemble a skull. Unlike the hybrids and constructs they had sensed, this being's shadow signature was powerful, refined, almost familiar. Who are you? Naruto demanded, positioning himself between the figure and Hinata. I am the vessel, the masked figure replied, voice resonating with unnatural depth. The one chosen to become the Shadow Sovereign when the true monarch returns. Hinata had already activated her communication device, sending a silent alert to the rest of the team. Now she dropped into her gentle fist stance, ready to defend against an attack. If you're just a vessel, then you're not the one pulling the strings, Naruto said, trying to keep the figure talking while his teammates responded to the alert. Who's your master? Who is this true monarch you keep talking about? The vessel tilted their head, the mask gleaming in the moonlight. You carry his power, yet know nothing of him. How Ashbourne must have deceived you, child. The mention of Ashbourne sent a shock through Naruto. What do you know about Ashbourne? Everything, the vessel replied simply. I know he was but one of 3 shadow monarchs, brothers who ruled the realm between life and death. I know he betrayed his siblings, sealing them away and claiming sole dominion. And I know he has chosen you, a mere human child, as his successor, rather than returning the power to its rightful heir. Is this true? Naruto silently asked Ashbourne. Were there other monarchs? Ashbourne's voice, when it came, held a reluctance Naruto had never heard before. Yes, but the La is not as simple as this vessel claims. The vessel took a step forward, shadow energy swirling around their robed form. You need not die, Naruto Uzumaki. Surrender Ashbourne's essence, become a general in the true monarch's army. And you will be rewarded beyond your imagination. Not interested, Naruto replied firmly. Whatever the full story is, I know enough about your methods. You drain innocent people of their life force. You create twisted shadow constructs. You're planning to sacrifice civilians for your ritual. That tells me all I need to know about your true monarch. The vessel sighed, the sound echoing hollowly from behind the mask. Then you will learn through pain. They moved with blinding speed, hands forming seals Naruto had never seen before. Shadow style. Binding chains. Darkness erupted from the ground, forming solid chains that whipped toward Naruto and Hinata. Naruto's shadow responded instinctively, rising to intercept the attack while Hinata dodged with the grace of her gentle fist training. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto called, creating 5 shadow-infused clones that surrounded the vessel. The clones attacked simultaneously, but the vessel moved with fluid grace, evading their strikes while forming new seals. Shadow style. Devouring mist. A dark fog poured from the vessel's sleeves, engulfing 2 of the clones. They screamed as their forms began to dissolve, the shadow energy that comprised them being absorbed into the mist. They're trying to consume your shadow energy, Ashbourne warned. Do not let the mist touch you directly. Naruto leapt back, calling forth his shadow soldiers. The tiger and the Inuzuka Chunin emerged from his shadow, lunging at the vessel from opposite sides. The vessel seemed momentarily surprised by the appearance of the shadow soldiers, hesitating just long enough for the tiger to score a glancing blow across their side. Dark particles scattered from the wound, not blood, but pure shadow essence. "So Ashbourne has taught you to command shadows already," the vessel observed, sounding almost impressed. "But your army is pitifully small, child." With a sweep of their arm, the vessel summoned 6 shadow constructs, similar to those they had encountered in the forest, but more refined, more solid. Each bore weapons of solidified darkness, and their eyes glowed with the same sickly blue light. The battle escalated quickly. Hinata engaged 2 of the constructs, her gentle fist strikes passing through their non-vital areas but causing disruption when she targeted their chakra network analogs. Naruto's remaining Loans and shadow soldiers fought the others, while he faced the vessel directly. "You cannot win this, false monarch," the vessel taunted, forming more shadow chains that lashed at Naruto from multiple angles. "Your power is new, untested. Mine has been cultivated for years in preparation for the sovereign's return." Naruto dodged and blocked, looking for an opening. The vessel was right about one thing. His command of the Shadow Monarch system was still developing, his army small compared to what this enemy could field. But Naruto Uzumaki had never relied solely on raw power. "Maybe my shadow army is still growing," he acknowledged, forming a Rasengan in his palm. "But I've got other tricks." He charged forward, shadow energy instinctively flowing into the Rasengan and transforming it. The swirling sphere darkened, black particles spiraling within the blue chakra, creating a technique Naruto had never consciously designed. "Shadow style. Spiraling shadow sphere," he called out, driving the modified Rasengan toward the vessel. The vessel attempted to block with a shield of solidified shadow, but the spiraling shadow sphere tore through it, striking them in the chest and sending them flying backward into a tree. The impact shattered their mask, revealing a face that was partially human, partially composed of living shadow, a more advanced hybrid than any they had encountered. Before Naruto could press his advantage, a massive surge of shadow energy erupted from the temple. The ritual had begun. "You're too late," the vessel gasped, shadows swirling around their damaged form. "The summoning has already commenced. The true monarch returns tonight." Hinata appeared at Naruto's side, having dispatched the constructs with surprising efficiency. "Naruto, the civilians. They're being drained into the container." The rest of the team converged on their position, having fought their way through shadow constructs that had surrounded the temple. "We need to stop that ritual," Shikamaru ordered, quickly assessing the situation. "Sasuke, Sakura, Shino, secure the temple entrance. Naruto, Hinata, and I will go for the central chamber and the civilians." The vessel laughed, a "ow" sound that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Go, then. Witness the return of the Shadow Sovereign. Perhaps then you will understand the futility of your resistance." With that, they dissolved into particles of darkness that scattered on the night wind, retreating rather than continuing the fight. "They're stalling us," Naruto realized. "The ritual is what matters to them, not defeating us here." "Then we don't have time to waste," Shikamaru replied grimly. "Move out." The team split as planned, charging toward the temple. As they approached, Naruto felt the shadow energy growing stronger, pulsing like a massive heartbeat that resonated with his own shadow. Whatever was happening inside, it was reaching a critical point. "Be wary, young monarch," Ashbourne cautioned. "What awaits within that temple is an echo of ancient power, a fragment of one who once rivaled my own strength." "You still need to explain about these other monarchs," Naruto thought back as they raced through the temple entrance, past Sasuke and the others who were engaging shadow constructs. "And I shall, if we survive what comes next." The interior of the temple was a maze of collapsed columns and crumbling walls. Hinata's Byakugan guided them unerringly toward the central chamber. As they drew closer, the shadow energy became so intense that Naruto could see it even without his special senses, dark tendrils creeping along the walls, pulsing with sickly blue light. They burst into the central chamber to find a nightmarish scene. The 5 civilians hung suspended in midair around a ritual circle inscribed on the stone floor. dark energy pouring from their bodies into a central vessel, a black crystalline container that pulsed with power. Hooded figures chanted in an ancient language, their voices creating harmonics that made the very air vibrate. "We need to disrupt the circle," Shikamaru said, analyzing the ritual. "Naruto, use your shadow soldiers to attack the chanters. Hinata and I will free the civilians." Before they could implement the plan, the central vessel cracked, releasing a surge of shadow energy that knocked them backward. The chanting reached a crescendo, and a voice, ancient, powerful, and filled with malice, echoed through the chamber. "At last, I return." The vessel shattered completely, and from within rose a figure composed entirely of shadow, taller, more substantial than any construct they had encountered. It wore armor of darkness, crowned with antlers that stretched toward the ceiling. Its eyes glowed not blue but deep crimson, like pools of fresh blood. "Mortals," it addressed them, its voice resonating on multiple levels. "You stand before Malgrath, the Shadow Sovereign, rightful ruler of the realm between. Kneel or be destroyed." Malgrath, Ashbourne's voice was tight with recognition. The youngest of us three, always the most ambitious. He was not supposed to return, not yet. The shadow being, Malgrath, turned its attention directly to Naruto, its crimson eyes narrowing. "Ah, the vessel of my traitorous brother. Come, child, let me release you from Ashbourne's burden." Naruto stood his ground, summoning both his shadow soldiers to his side. "I don't know the full story between you and Ashbourne, but I've seen enough of your methods. Draining innocent people, creating twisted constructs, that's not the path of any monarch I want to follow." Malgrath's form seemed to grow larger, spreading across the ceiling of the chamber. "Foolish human, you comprehend nothing of true power. The Shadow Monarch system was never meant for mortals, it is the birthright of gods." With that declaration, Malgrath struck, tendrils of shadow lashing out with devastating force. Naruto and his teammates scattered, barely avoiding the attack that shattered stone where they had stood. The battle that followed was unlike anything Naruto had experienced. Malgrath commanded shadows with effortless mastery, creating constructs and weapons from darkness itself. Even partially reformed, his power dwarfed what Naruto could currently wield. Shikamaru's shadow possession technique proved surprisingly effective, temporarily binding portions of Malgrath's form, while Hinata's gentle fist disrupted the shadow energy when she managed to land strikes. But for every small victory, Malgrath seemed to grow stronger, drawing power from the shadows that filled the ancient temple. "We need to get the civilians out," Naruto called to his teammates as he dodged another assault. "He's still feeding on their energy." Hinata and Shikamaru redoubled their efforts to reach the suspended civilians, while Naruto and his shadow soldiers engaged Malgrath directly. The Inuzuka Shadow Chunin moved with incredible speed, targeting what appeared to be vulnerable points in Malgrath's form. The Shadow Tiger provided powerful direct attacks. "These pitiful shadows you command, mere fragments compared to what you could wield if you embraced true power," Malgrath taunted. "Surrender Ashbourne's essence to me, and I will show you mastery beyond your imagination." Not interested, Naruto shot back, forming another Shadow Rasengan. "I make my own path. Always have, always will." He launched himself at Malgrath, the spiraling shadow sphere connecting with the ancient being's core. For a moment, the attack seemed to disrupt Malgrath's form, causing him to roar in pain and fury. "His manifestation is incomplete," Ashbourne observed. "The ritual was interrupted too soon. He cannot maintain this form for long in your realm." This insight gave Naruto an idea. "We don't need to defeat him, just outlast him until his form destabilizes." Quote, Shikamaru, ever quick to adapt, immediately understood. Defensive formation. Protect the civilians and each other, let him exhaust himself. The team regrouped, forming a protective circle around the civilians that Hinata had managed to lower to the ground. Sasuke, Sakura, and Shino joined them, having dispatched the shadow constructs at the entrance. "What are we facing?" Sasuke demanded, Sharingan active as he analyzed Malgrath's towering form. "An ancient shadow being. Some kind of deity or demon," Naruto explained quickly. "His manifestation is incomplete. We need to hold out until he can't maintain his form." Malgrath seemed to understand their strategy, his attacks becoming more focused, more desperate. "You cannot escape me," vessel of Ashbourne. What has begun cannot be undone. The Age of Shadows returns this night. Despite his boasts, Malgrath's form was indeed beginning to destabilize. The edges of his massive shadow body flickered and wavered, and the crimson glow of his eyes dimmed intermittently. But even in his weakening state, he remained incredibly dangerous. A sudden surge of shadow energy struck directly at Naruto, bypassing his defenses and connecting with his chakra network. Pain lanced through him as Malgrath attempted to extract Ashbourne's essence directly. "Come to me, brother," Malgrath called, not to Naruto but to the entity within him. "Your punishment has lasted long enough." Naruto fell to his knees, feeling as if his very soul were being torn apart. Within his mindscape, he could see Ashbourne's form, the regal shadow warrior, being pulled toward a crimson vortex. "Fight him, young monarch," Ashbourne urged, his voice strained. "Your will is stronger than you know." Drawing on reserves of determination that had seen him through countless battles, Naruto resisted the extraction. His shadow responded to his will, solidifying around him like armor, breaking Malgrath's connection. "My shadow, my choice," Naruto growled, staggering back to his feet. "And I choose to stand against you." His declaration seemed to resonate with something deep within the Shadow Monarch system. Naruto felt a surge of power, not borrowed or granted, but awakened from within. His shadow spread across the chamber floor, darkening and thickening until it resembled a pool of liquid darkness. From this pool rose new shadow soldiers, not just the tiger and the Chunin, but a small army of shadows he had encountered since his transformation. Minor creatures and fallen enemies whose essence he had absorbed without conscious extraction, now responding to his awakened command. "What's happening?" Sakura gasped, watching as nearly a dozen shadow beings formed ranks around Naruto. "His power is evolving," Sasuke observed, Sharingan tracking the flow of energy. "The system is responding to his will." Malgrath recoiled, his destabilizing form fluctuating wildly. "Impossible. A human cannot command the full Shadow Monarch system so soon." "What have you done, Ashbourne?" "Nothing he has not earned himself," Ashbourne's voice echoed, now audible to all present. "This is the evolution of the system, not godhood imposed, but power awakened through genuine conviction." Naruto felt the truth of those words resonating through his entire being. This power had not been simply given to him, it had transformed in response to his own nature, his own choices. With newfound clarity, he directed his shadow army against Malgrath. They moved as one, attacking from all directions with perfect coordination. Each strike further destabilized the ancient being's form, forcing him to expend precious energy to maintain his manifestation. "This is not the end," Malgrath declared as his form began to collapse inward. "Merely the first skirmish in a war that spans millennia. We shall meet again, vessel of Ashbourne. Or perhaps I should call you Shadow Monarch of Konoha." With those ominous words, Malgrath's form imploded, shadow energy rushing back into the shattered remains of the crystalline vessel. A final pulse of power shook the temple, and then silence fell. Naruto stood amidst his shadow army, breathing heavily from exertion. One by one, he recalled the shadows, thanking them silently as they returned to his own shadow. Only the tiger and the Chunin remain. Only the tiger and the Chunin remained manifested, standing guard as the team regrouped and assessed the situation. "Is everyone all right?" Shikamaru asked, checking his teammates for injuries. Sakura was already moving among them, her medical ninjutsu addressing the worst of their wounds. "Nothing life-threatening, but we'll all need proper treatment once we return to the village." Naruto approached the shattered remains of the crystalline vessel, sensing remnants of Malgrath's energy still clinging to the fragments. "He's not gone permanently, is he?" "No," Ashbourne confirmed. "Merely banished for now. Without a proper vessel and sufficient energy, he cannot maintain a presence in your realm." "What was that?" Sasuke demanded, joining Naruto by the fragments. "That wasn't just some missing nin with a new technique. That was something else entirely." "It's complicated," Naruto sighed, realizing he owed his teammates a fuller explanation. According to Ashbourne, there were originally 3 shadow monarchs, powerful beings who ruled the realm between life and death. Malgrath was one of them, apparently the youngest brother, and Ashbourne is another, Hinata concluded, her Byakugan still active as she examined the shadow energy lingering in the chamber. The one whose power you inherited. Naruto nodded. The vessel, that masked figure we fought, claimed Ashbourne betrayed his brothers, sealing them away and taking sole control. But there's clearly more to the story. Indeed there is, Ashbourne's voice emerged, this time audible to all of them. The shadows in the chamber gathered, forming a spectral image of the armored warrior Naruto had seen in his mindscape. And you have earned the right to hear it. The team tensed at the manifestation, but Naruto raised a hand reassuringly. It's okay. This is Ashbourne, the previous Shadow Monarch and the source of my system. Ashbourne's form solidified, becoming more distinct as he addressed them. Ages ago, the realm of shadows existed in balance, governed by three brothers, myself, Malgrath, and Zephyrin. We maintained the boundaries between life and death, ensuring neither realm encroached upon the other. The shadows around them shifted, creating ethereal scenes that illustrated his tale, three armored figures presiding over a vast, twilight domain. But Malgrath grew dissatisfied with mere stewardship. He sought to expand the shadow realm, to consume portions of both the living world and the afterlife. When Zephyrin and I opposed him, he attempted to absorb our essences to increase his own power. The shadow images showed a brutal battle between the three entities, devastating in its scale and intensity. We prevailed, but at great cost. Zephyrin sacrificed himself to weaken Malgrath enough for me to seal him away. But I knew the seal would not hold forever. Eventually, Malgrath would find a way to influence the living world again. Seeking vessels to facilitate his return, the images shifted to show Ashbourne, alone now, creating a system that would outlast his direct governance. I created the Shadow Monarch Psi. STEM is a legacy, a means for worthy successors to maintain the balance in my absence. When my time came to fade, the system would seek out those with the will and character to wield shadow powers responsibly. Ashbourne's form turned directly to Naruto. You were not the first candidate the system encountered, Naruto Uzumaki. But you were the first whose nature resonated with its true purpose, not domination, but protection. The Nine Tails chakra within you provided a unique foundation, allowing the system to transform rather than merely transfer. The revelation struck Naruto deeply. He had wondered why he had been chosen. Whether it had been random chance or some greater design. To learn that his own nature had been the deciding factor of firm choices he had made throughout his life. So Malgrath and his followers believe the system was stolen from him, Shikamaru summarized, his analytical mind quickly processing the implications. And they're trying to reclaim it by cultivating shadow energy and creating a suitable vessel. Precisely, Ashbourne confirmed. The ritual you interrupted was meant to fully manifest Malgrath in your realm, allowing him to reclaim his power directly. Though thwarted, he will try again. His followers will continue to harvest shadow energy from living beings, creating new vessels until they succeed. Then we need to find them and stop them permanently, Sasuke stated, his expression grim. Before they can complete another ritual. But how? Sakura asked. If they've been operating in secret for years, they could have bases and followers throughout the 5 nations. Naruto considered the challenge, remembering the memories he had glimpsed from his shadow soldiers, particularly the Inuzuka Chunin who had been killed by Malgrath's followers. My shadows, he realized. They retain memories from their lives, and their deaths. The Chunin saw who attacked their patrol. Maybe those memories can lead us to more of Malgrath's followers. A wise approach, Ashbourne agreed. The shadows you command are more than mere soldiers, they are repositories of knowledge and experience, allies in the truest sense. This perspective resonated with Naruto's own instincts about his shadows. He had never viewed them as tools or servants, but as extensions of himself and those who had fallen. We should secure these civilians and clear the temple, Shikamaru decided. Bringing them back to immediate concerns. Then report to Lady Tsunade. This has evolved beyond a simple investigation mission. As the team moved to action, tending to the unconscious civilians and searching the temple for additional evidence, Naruto took a moment to process everything that had happened. His shadow abilities had evolved significantly during the confrontation with Malgrath, revealing potential he hadn't known existed. You have taken the first steps toward true mastery, Ashbourne observed as Naruto examined his shadow, now deeper and more substantial than before. The Shadow Mona, RCH system continues to adapt to your nature, creating something neither I nor Malgrath anticipated. What does that mean for the future? Naruto questioned silently. If Malgrath returns, will I be strong enough to face him? That remains to be seen, Ashbourne replied honestly. But you have already demonstrated capabilities beyond what I expected at this stage. Your integration of shadow energy with existing techniques, the Shadow Rasengan, for instance, shows remarkable innovation. Naruto recalled the technique he had created instinctively during the battle, shadow energy merging with his signet. Your jutsu to create something new and powerful. And your connection with the Hyuga girl is particularly intriguing, Ashbourne continued. She possesses a natural affinity for shadow energy despite having no direct exposure to the system. Such resonance is rare and potentially significant. Naruto glanced toward Hinata, who was using her Byakugan to ensure no shadow constructs remained hidden in the temple. He had noticed it too, how his shadows seemed drawn to her, how her presence somehow clarified his connection to the system. Naruto, Sasuke called, interrupting his thoughts. You should see this. In a small chamber adjoining the ritual room, Sasuke had discovered a collection of scrolls and artifacts. Among them was a map marked with locations across the 5 great nations, each annotated with dates and cryptic symbols. Attack plans, Shikamaru concluded, examining the map. Or ritual sites. Either way, it shows their operation extends far beyond Tanzaku town. Some of these dates have already passed, Sakura noted, pointing to several markings, but others are in the future, including one near Konoha 3 weeks from now. The discovery lent urgency to their mission. Whatever Malgrath's followers were planning, it was expansive and methodical, with Konoha itself as a target. We take everything, Naruto decided. All the scrolls, the map, any artifacts that might help us understand what we're facing. The team worked efficiently to secure the evidence, while Sakura and Hinata ensured the rescued civilians were stable for transport back to Tanzaku town. By the time dawn broke, they had cleared the temple and begun their return journey. The unconscious civilians carried on stretchers created from temple materials. As they descended the hillside toward the town, Naruto found himself walking alongside Hinata, who had been unusually quiet since the battle. Are you okay? He asked gently. She nodded, though her expression remained troubled. I'm just processing everything. Those shadow beings, Malgrath. Ashbourne's story. It's all so much bigger than we initially thought. Yeah, Naruto agreed. What started as investigating some strange attacks has turned into, I don't even know what to call it, a shadow war, and you're at the center of it, Hinata observed, her pale eyes studying him with concern. Because of the power you received. Naruto sighed, feeling the weight of that reality. Not exactly how I plan to become Hokage someday, getting caught in a conflict between ancient shadow deities. To his surprise, Hinata smiled. But it's very, you. Finding yourself in the middle of something bigger than anyone expected, changing the rules, making the power your own. Her assessment was so accurate, so accepting of who he was, that Naruto felt a surge of warmth toward her. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze of gratitude. Thanks, Hinata, for seeing me, not just the Shadow Monarch, but me. The moment was erupted as they reached the outskirts of Tanzaku town, where local authorities had been alerted to their return. The rescued civilians were transferred to medical care, while the team made arrangements to return to Konoha immediately with their evidence and findings. Before departing, Naruto visited the local hospital to check on the civilians they had rescued. They remained unconscious, their chakra networks severely depleted but gradually stabilizing according to the medical staff. As he stood beside the bed of a young woman, perhaps a few years older than himself, Naruto felt a strange sensation from his shadow. It extended slightly toward her, drawn by something. She is near death, Ashbourne observed. Her essence hovers between realms. You could claim her shadow, ensure it serves a purpose rather than simply fading. The suggestion troubled Naruto. Taking shadows from enemies in battle or from those already dead was one thing, but this felt different, more personal, more consequential. Would it help her? He asked quietly. If I took her shadow, would her body recover better? No, Ashbourne replied with surprising honesty. The extraction would likely hasten her passing. The shadow is still tied to her life force. Naruto withdrew his shadow immediately. Then it's not an option. I won't take someone's shadow if it harms them. He felt Ashbourne's approval at his decision. You can't. In you to redefine the boundaries of the Shadow Monarch system, young successor. Such choices will shape its evolution under your stewardship. Leaving the hospital, Naruto rejoined his team for the journey back to Konoha. As they traveled, he reflected on what he had learned about his power and its origins. The system wasn't simply a tool or technique to be mastered, it was a living legacy, adapting to his will and nature. And somewhere out there, Malgrath and his followers were planning their next move, seeking to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. The confrontation at the temple had been merely the opening skirmish in a conflict that had begun ages before Naruto's birth. But he wouldn't face it alone. Looking at his teammates, friends who had stood with him against an ancient shadow deity without hesitation, Naruto felt a surge of determination. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And his shadow army would continue to grow, not through conquest or sacrifice, but through honor and protection, the true path of the Shadow Monarch of Konoha. The journey back to Konoha took 2 days, during which the team maintained heightened vigilance against potential ambushes. Naruto spent much of the travel time communicating with Ashbourne, learning more about the Shadow Monarch system and its capabilities. Your shadow extraction is not limited to the recently deceased, Ashbourne explained as they made camp on the first night. With sufficient mastery, you can claim shadows from battlefields long past, where the essence of fallen warriors lingers in the earth itself. Like a spiritual archaeology, Naruto mused, finding the concept both fascinating and slightly unsettling. Reclaiming shadows that would otherwise be lost to time. Precisely. Such shadows are often weaker than those freshly claimed, but they bring knowledge and techniques from ages past. A valuable addition to any Shadow Monarch's army. This expanded Naruto's understanding of his potential resources. Battlefields throughout the ninja world might contain shadows waiting to be awakened and given purpose once more. What about my Shadow Rasengan? Naruto asked, recalling how naturally the technique had developed during the battle. That wasn't something you taught me. No, it was your own innovation, the integration of shadow energy with your existing techniques. This adaptability is what makes you unique among Shadow Monarchs. Where others might simply command shadows as they are, you transform them, creating something new. The affirmation encouraged Naruto to experiment further. During breaks in their journey, he practiced channeling shadow energy into his various jutsu, discovering new variations and capabilities. By the time they reached Konoha's gates on the evening of the second day, Naruto had developed a deeper connection with his shadow and a better understanding of its potential. But questions still remained, particularly about the third Shadow Monarch, Zephyrin, who had sacrificed himself in the ancient conflict. The team reported directly to Tsunade upon their return, gathering in her office to debrief on the mission. The Hokage listened with growing concern as they recounted their encounter with Malgrath and his followers. So we're dealing with an ancient shadow entity attempting to return to our world, she summarized when they finished. One with followers scattered across the 5 nations, harvesting chakra to facilitate his return. That's the simplified version, yes, Shikamaru confirmed. But there's more to consider. The map we recovered shows coordinated activity, not just random attacks, but a methodical plan leading to something bigger. He spread the captured map on Tsunade's desk, pointing to the markings near Konoha. This location is marked for 3 weeks from now. Based on the pattern, it appears to be a major operation, possibly another attempt at manifesting Malgrath. Tsunade studied the map, her expression grave. The marked location is near the old Uzumaki shrine in the forests north of the village. That can't be coincidence. The Uzumaki clan? Naruto asked, surprised by the connection to his mother's heritage. The Uzumaki were renowned for their sealing techniques, Tsunade explained, including methods for containing powerful entities. If Malgrath's followers are targeting an Uzumaki shrine, they might be seeking no edge to strengthen their ritual, or to break whatever seals are helping to contain Malgrath's full power. The possibility added new urgency to the situation. If Malgrath gained access to Uzumaki sealing knowledge, his next manifestation might not be as incomplete or vulnerable as the one they had faced. We need a 2-pronged approach, Tsunade decided. First, a team to investigate this Uzumaki shrine. Determine what Malgrath's followers might be seeking there. Second, a broader intelligence operation to identify and track shadow users across the 5 nations. I should lead the shrine investigation, Naruto stated. Not just because of my shadow abilities, but because of my Uzumaki heritage. If there are seals or artifacts there that respond to Uzumaki blood, I might be able to access them. Tsunade nodded. Agreed. You'll take Hinata, Sasuke, and Sakura. Shikamaru and Shino will coordinate the intelligence operation, working with our Anbu to establish a monitoring network for shadow energy signatures. There's one more thing we should consider, Sasuke interjected. Training Naruto to fully utilize the Shadow Monarch system. If Malgrath returns in a more complete form, Naruto may be our best defense. I'm already working on that, Naruto assured them. Ashbourne has been teaching me, and I've been experimenting with integrating shadow energy into my existing techniques. Not enough, Sasuke replied bluntly. You need practical combat experience against different types of opponents. Your shadow soldiers need to grow in number and diversity. And you need to test the limits of your extraction capabilities. His assessment was accurate, if somewhat cold. Naruto had made progress, but he was still far from mastering the full potential of the Shadow Monarch system. What do you suggest? Tsunade asked Sasuke. Controlled combat scenarios in Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. It's isolated, contains a variety of potential shadow sources, and has natural barriers to prevent unwanted observation. And who would train with him? We can't risk regular shinobi being exposed to shadow extraction techniques. I will, Sasuke stated. My Sharingan allows me to analyze the shadow energy flow, and I can defend against extraction attempts. Hinata's Byakugan provides similar advantages, making her another suitable training partner. Hinata nodded her agreement. They noticed patterns in how the shadow energy moves. I believe I could help Naruto refine his control. Tsunade considered the proposal. Very well. You'll have 3 days for intensive training before departing for the Uzumaki Shrine. Shikamaru, establish the intelligence network immediately. I want reports on any shadow-related activity, no matter how minor. With their assignments clear, the team was dismissed to rest and prepare. As they left the Hokage Tower, Naruto found himself walking between Sasuke and Hinata, both of whom had volunteered to help him train despite the potential risks. Thank you, he said simply. Both of you. I know working with these shadow techniques isn't exactly comfortable. Comfort isn't the point, Sasuke replied pragmatically. Power is, and understanding it thoroughly. It's more than that, Hinata added softly. It's about helping you master something that's become part of who you are. Just as we've all had to master our own abilities. Their differing perspectives perfectly encapsulated their personalities, Sasuke practical and power-focused, Hinata empathetic and supportive. Naruto felt fortunate to have both approaches guiding his development. We start tomorrow at dawn. Sasuke decided. The Forest of Death, Eastern Entrance. Come prepared for extended training. With that, he departed, leaving Naruto and Hinata standing outside the tower as evening settled over Konoha. He's intense, Naruto commented with a half-smile. But probably right about needing more structured training. Hinata nodded. The confrontation with Malgrath how'd both your potential and the gaps in your control. With proper training, you could significantly increase your capabilities before we reach the shrine. Her analytical assessment surprised Naruto. Beneath her gentle exterior, Hinata possessed a sharp tactical mind that was often overlooked. Would you like to get some ramen? He asked suddenly. I'm starving after all that travel, and, well, I'd like to talk more about what you observed during the battle. Your Byakugan caught things I probably missed. Hinata's cheeks colored slightly, but she maintained her composure. I'd like that, Ichiraku's. Is there anywhere else? Naruto grinned, some of his old exuberance breaking through the seriousness that had characterized him since his transformation. As they walked toward the familiar ramen stand, Naruto felt his shadow stir slightly, reaching toward Hinata's in that now familiar way. Rather than resisting the connection, he allowed it to happen, curious about what it might reveal. A subtle resonance formed between their shadows, nothing intrusive or controlling, just a harmonious alignment that seemed to clarify Naruto's perception of the shadow energy flowing through him. Fascinating, Ashbourne commented. Her chakra naturally stabilizes the shadow energy within you. Such compatibility is rare and valuable. What does it mean? Naruto asked silently. It means she could be more than merely an ally in battle. She could become a conduit, an amplifier for your abilities, if both of you were willing. The concept was intriguing but raised questions about what such a connection might entail. Naruto didn't want to put Hinata at risk or burden her with yet another role in his complicated life. For now, he decided to simply enjoy her company and the normalcy of sharing a meal at Ichiraku's. Tomorrow would bring intensive training and further exploration of his shadow abilities. Tonight was for friendship, for grounding himself in the human connections that defined him beyond his role as the Shadow Monarch. Dawn broke cold and misty over Training Ground 44. The massive trees of the Forest of Death loomed like silent sentinels, their shadows deep and primordial in the early light. Naruto arrived to find Sasuke already waiting, arms crossed and expression focused. "You're late," Sasuke observed, though Naruto was actually a few minutes early. "Good morning to you too," Naruto replied with a slight smile. "Where's Hinata?" "Already inside, scouting the training area I've selected." Sasuke turned toward the forest. "Follow me, and stay alert. I've arranged some surprises to test your reflexes." The surprises became apparent almost immediately as they entered the forest. Shadow clones of Sasuke attacked from multiple angles, forcing Naruto to defend himself while continuing to move forward. "Your physical enhancements are impressive," Sasuke commented as Naruto dispatched the clones with fluid efficiency. "But you're still not fully integrating your shadow abilities into your combat style." "What do you mean? Your shadow moves separately from your physical attacks. They should be synchronized, complementary, your shadow extending your reach while your body maintains the offensive." Sasuke's observation was accurate. Naruto had been treating his shadow abilities as a separate toolkit rather than an integrated part of his fighting style. They reached a clearing where Hinata waited, her Byakugan already activated. Nearby, several training dummies had been arranged in various fighting stances. "Before we begin specialized training, I want to see your current capabilities," Sasuke stated. "Summon all your shadow soldiers." Naruto nodded, extending his shadow across the clearing. From it emerged his current army, the Shadow Tiger, the Inuzuka Chunin, and the various minor shadows he had subconsciously collected since his transformation: animals, fallen enemies, even the echo of a civilian who had died near him during a previous mission. 9 shadows total, Hinata counted, each with distinct chakra patterns based on their origins. "Not enough," Sasuke assessed bluntly. "Against someone like Malgrath or his vessel, you'll need both quality and quantity." "I can't just go around collecting shadows from anyone who dies," Naruto protested. "It has to mean something. They have to be worthy additions, not just numbers." Sasuke's expression softened slightly, acknowledging Naruto's ethical boundary. "Fair enough. But we can work with what's already available in this forest. Many powerful creatures have died here over the years during the Chunin exams and other training exercises." Ashbourne mentioned something about that. "Extracting shadows from battlefields where essence lingers in the earth." "Then that's where we start," Sasuke decided. "Hinata, can you locate concentrations of residual chakra in the surrounding area? Places where significant deaths have occurred." Hinata expanded her Byakugan's range, scanning the forest. "There are several areas with unusual chakra residue. The strongest is about half a kilometer northeast. It appears to be where a large predator died, possibly during the last Chunin exams." "Perfect." Sasuke turned to Naruto. "Your first task: extract a shadow from a site of previous death. No fresh kills, no easy targets, prove you can command the echoes of the past." The challenge was exactly what Naruto needed, pushing his abilities in a controlled environment while respecting his ethical concerns. They moved as a group to the location Hinata had identified, finding a small clearing where signs of an old battle remained visible: scorched earth, shattered trees, and deep gouges in the ground. "A giant scorpion died here," Hinata reported, examining the residual chakra. "Killed by fire jutsu approximately 8 months ago." Naruto closed his eyes, extending his senses into the earth beneath his feet. At first, he felt nothing but the natural energy of the forest. Then, concentrating more deeply, he detected it, a faint echo of the creature's final moments, its essence partially preserved in the ground saturated with its chakra. Reach deeper, Ashbourne instructed. Past the physical remains, in. To the imprint left upon the boundary between realms. Following the guidance, Naruto extended his shadow into the earth itself, seeking the lingering trace of the scorpion's shadow. It was far more difficult than extracting from recently deceased beings, like trying to grasp smoke rather than solid matter. After several minutes of concentrated effort, he finally connected with the essence. His shadow darkened as it drew the faint remnants upward, condensing the scattered energy into a coherent form. Shadow extraction partially successful. Diminished scorpion shadow added to army. The notification in his mind was different from previous extractions, acknowledging the shadow's reduced power due to the time elapsed since death. When Naruto summoned it, the scorpion that appeared was smaller than it would have been in life. Its form slightly transparent in places. It worked, he reported, studying his new shadow soldier. But it's weaker than a freshly extracted shadow. Expected, Sasuke noted, his Sharingan analyzing the construct. But still useful. These diminished shadows can serve specific purposes even if they lack the power of your primary soldiers. Hinata approached the shadow scorpion. Her Byakugan revealing details invisible to normal sight. Its sting appears to retain the venom properties of the original. Even diminished, that could be valuable against certain opponents. The observation highlighted an important aspect of shadow extraction that Naruto hadn't fully considered, the specific abilities and attributes that made each shadow uniquely useful. Over the next several hours, they continued this process, locating sites of significant deaths throughout the forest and practicing extraction of lingering shadows. By midday, Naruto had added 5 diminished shadows to his army, the scorpion, 2 giant snakes, a bear, and surprisingly, the echo of a shinobi who had fallen during a long-ago mission. Your efficiency is improving, Sasuke noted as they took a brief rest. The last extraction took half the time of the first. It's getting easier to sense the remnants, Naruto explained. Like tuning into a specific frequency once you know what you're listening for. Your chakra flow has also stabilized, Hinata added. The shadow energy integrates more smoothly now, with less disruption to your natural network. The practical training was yielding results faster than theoretical instruction could have. Naruto was developing an intuitive understanding of his abilities through direct application. Next phase, Sasuke announced after their break. Combat integration. You need to incorporate shadow manipulation into your fighting style, not just as separate techniques but as extensions of your physical movements. He led them to another clearing. This one larger and bordered by tall stone outcroppings that provided natural barriers. Here, Sasuke had arranged more sophisticated training dummies, some equipped with chakra-responsive mechanisms had allowed them to move and counterattack. These are Anbu training units, Naruto recognized. How did you get access to them? Kakashi. Sasuke replied simply. He agrees your training is a priority. The acknowledgement from their former sensei meant more than Sasuke probably realized. Despite his new abilities and the ancient conflict he had become entangled in, Naruto was still a Konoha shinobi. Supported by the village's leadership. The exercise is straightforward, Sasuke continued. Defeat the training units using integrated shadow techniques, physical and shadow attacks working in tandem. Hinata and I will observe and provide feedback. As soon as Sasuke activated the units, they sprang into motion, attacking with the programmed precision of elite shinobi. Naruto responded instinctively, dodging and countering with his enhanced physical abilities. You're still separating your techniques, Sasuke called from the sidelines. Shadow and physical movement should be synchronized. Understanding the critique, Naruto adjusted his approach. As he threw a punch at one unit, he extended his shadow simultaneously, striking another from below. When he leapt to avoid an attack, his shadow stretched beneath him, tripping a third unit. Gradually, he developed a rhythm, body and shadow moving as complementary aspects of a unified fighting style. His shadow no longer merely followed his movements but anticipated them, reaching where his body would be moments later or extending his range beyond physical limitations. Better, Sasuke acknowledged as Naruto disabled the last training unit. Your shadow is becoming a true extension of yourself rather than just a tool. I can see the improvement in your chakra flow, Hinata added. The shadow energy moves with your intentions now, not after them. The praise from both of them fueled Naruto's determination to master these abilities fully. They continued training through the afternoon, focusing on different aspects of Shadow manipulation, from direct combat applications to more subtle uses like reconnaissance and communication. By sunset, Naruto was exhausted but satisfied with his progress. His control had improved significantly, and he had begun to understand the nuances of shadow energy that Ashbourne had been trying to explain theoretically. One more exercise before we end for today, Sasuke decided as the forest darkened around them. Shadow clones enhanced with your shadow energy, not just the dark clones you've created before, but fully integrated extensions of your shadow army. Is that possible? Naruto questioned. Indeed, Ashbourne confirmed. Shadow soldiers can be multiplied through a technique similar to your clone jutsu, creating temporary duplicates that share the original's abilities. Following Ashbourne's guidance, Naruto performed a modified version of his shadow clone hand signs while focusing on his existing shadow soldiers. The tiger, the Inuzuka Chunin, and the newly acquired scorpion stepped forward. Their forms shimmering as shadow energy coalesced around them. From each soldier emerged two duplicates, slightly less substantial than the originals but bearing the same appearances and abilities. Within moments, Naruto's small shadow army had tripled in visible numbers. Impressive, Sasuke commented, his Sharingan analyzing the technique. The duplicates consume continuous chakra to maintain, unlike your standard shadow clones, but they provide significant tactical advantages. They're connected differently too, Hinata observed. The originals are anchored directly to your shadow, while the duplicates are tethered to their respective originals. If an original is dispersed, its duplicates would also dissipate. The insight helped Naruto understand the technique's limitations. He duplicate shadows were powerful force multipliers but required strategic deployment to protect the original shadows that sustained them. As darkness fell completely over the forest, they concluded the day's training. Naruto dismissed his shadow army, feeling the now familiar sensation of the shadows returning to his own. With each extraction and command, his connection to these shadows deepened, not as master to servants, but as a leader to willing allies. Same time tomorrow, Sasuke stated as they prepared to leave the training ground. We'll focus on offensive applications and shadow extraction in combat situations. I'll be ready, Naruto assured him, already contemplating how to build on today's progress. As they parted ways at the forest's edge, Hinata lingered briefly. You did well today, she said, her voice soft but certain. The way you respect your shadows, treat them as allies rather than tools, it's changing how the energy responds to you. Her observation struck Naruto as particularly insightful. You can see that in the chakra flow. She nodded. When you command them with respect, the connection is stronger, more harmonious. I think that's why your shadow keeps eaching toward mine. It's seeking that same harmony. The comment reminded Naruto of the curious connection their shadows had formed. About that, Ashbourne mentioned you might be able to act as some kind of conduit or amplifier for my shadow abilities. Does that make any sense to you? Hinata considered this thoughtfully. My family's techniques focus on chakra pathways, seeing them, manipulating them, even closing them. Perhaps that gives me a natural affinity for working with your shadow energy, which flows through similar channels. Would you be willing to explore that tomorrow? As part of the training, Naruto asked, careful to frame it as a request rather than an expectation. Of course, she agreed without hesitation. If it helps you prepare for what's coming, I'm happy to try. Her readiness to help, to place herself at the intersection of ancient shadow powers, reminded Naruto yet again of the strength that lay beneath Hinata's gentle exterior. As they said their goodbyes, he found himself looking forward not just to mastering more techniques, but to exploring this unique connection they seemed to share. Walking home through the darkened streets of Konoha, Naruto noticed how differently he perceived the shadows now, not as absences of light, but as a dimension of their own, rich with potential and presence. His transformation into the Shadow Monarch had altered not just his abilities but his very perception of the world around him. You begin to see as a true monarch, Ashbourne observed. The Shadow Realm is not separate from your world, but interwoven with it, a parallel existence that touches all things. If that's true, Naruto wondered, then what exactly was Malgrath trying to do? Merge the realms completely. Worse, Ashbourne replied grimly. He sought to expand the Sha Dao realm at the expense of both the living world and the afterlife, consuming both to create a domain where he alone would rule. A singular realm of shadow under his absolute control. The ambition was staggering in its scope and terrible in its implications, the erasure of the boundaries between life, death, and shadow, rendering all existence subject to Malgrath's will. And that's still his goal, Naruto realized. Even now, even diminished as he is. Yes, the ritual you interrupted was but one attempt among many. He will continue to seek manifestation, growing stronger with each partial success. The gravity of the situation reinforced Naruto's determination to master his abilities as quickly as possible. This wasn't just about protecting Konoha anymore, it was about preserving the very. It was about preserving the very balance between realms, preventing a catastrophe that would affect all existence. Reaching his apartment, Naruto collapsed onto his bed, physical exhaustion finally catching up with him. But even as his body craved rest, his mind remained active, processing the day's training and planning for tomorrow's challenges. In the darkness of his room, he extended his shadow, watching as it spread across the floor and up the walls, larger and more substantial than it had been just days ago. Within it, he could sense his shadow soldiers resting, recovering, waiting for his call. "We're going to get stronger," he promised them quietly, "all of us together." As sleep finally claimed him, Naruto's dreams were filled with shadows and light, intertwining in patterns that somehow seemed to center around a pair of pale lavender eyes. The second day of training began with a focus on offensive capabilities. Sasuke, true to his pragmatic nature, had prepared a series of NGLY difficult combat scenarios designed to push Naruto's shadow manipulation to its limits. "Today we integrate your shadow extraction directly into combat," Sasuke explained as they gathered in a different section of the Forest of Death. "In a real battle, you won't have time for the careful, meditative approach you used yesterday." He gestured to several cages containing forest predators, giant centipedes, poisonous frogs, and other creatures captured specifically for this training. "These animals are already at the end of their natural lives," Sasuke clarified, seeing Naruto's concerned expression. "Used by Anbu for training purposes. Their shadows would be lost otherwise." Though still uncomfortable with the setup, Naruto understood the necessity. In combat against Malgrath's followers, he might need to extract shadows rapidly from fallen enemies to reinforce his army. "The exercise is straightforward," Sasuke continued. "Hinata and I will release these creatures in controlled sequence. You defeat them and extract their shadows immediately, incorporating them into your ongoing defense and offense." "And my role?" Hinata asked, having arrived moments after Naruto. "Two purposes," Sasuke replied. "First, monitor the chakra flow during rapid extraction, identify any inefficiencies or risks. Second, begin exploring this conduit capability Naruto mentioned yesterday." Naruto explained Ashbourne's observation about Hinata's potential to amplify or stabilize his shadow abilities. Sasuke listened with interest, his Sharingan activating to observe the subtle interaction between their chakra networks. "Interesting," he commented after studying them. "There is a resonance pattern when your shadows connect. It could be tactically significant if developed properly." With the training parameters established, they began. Sasuke released the first creature, a massive centipede that charged at Naruto with surprising speed. Naruto engaged it directly, using a combination of taijutsu and shadow manipulation to wear it down rather than killing it immediately. "Don't drag it out," Sasuke called. In real combat, efficiency is crucial. Taking the critique, Naruto finished the centipede with a decisive shadow strike. Then immediately extended his shadow to extract its essence as it died. The process was messier than his previous extractions, faster but less complete, resulting in a shadow soldier with reduced capabilities. "Your extraction efficiency drops significantly under pressure," Hinata observed, her Byakugan tracking the energy flow. "You're capturing perhaps 60% of the available shadow essence." Quote, "Try again," Sasuke instructed, releasing a poisonous forest frog. "Focus on the moment of death. That's when the shadow is most accessible." Naruto adjusted his approach with each creature, gradually improving his extraction efficiency in combat conditions. By the fifth opponent, a large spider with paralyzing venom, he had developed a rhythm: engage, defeat, extract in one fluid sequence of movements. Much better, Sasuke acknowledged. You're up to 80% efficiency now, according to Hinata's observations. The extracted combat shadows joined Naruto's growing army, arranged in formation around the clearing. Though individually less powerful than his core shadows like the tiger and the Inuzuka Chunin, their numbers provided tactical flexibility he had previously lacked. Now for the conduit experiment, Sasuke decided, nodding to Hinata. Show us what happens when your shadows actively connect. Hinata moved to stand beside Naruto, her expression focused but slightly nervous. I'm not entirely sure how to initiate this, she admitted. Maybe just allow it to happen, Naruto suggested. Our shadows seem to reach for each other naturally. Taking a deep breath, Hinata nodded. They stood side by side, allowing their shadows to merge on the forest floor. The connection formed almost immediately, a darkening where the shadows overlapped, followed by a visible current of energy flowing between them. Your chakra networks are synchronizing, Sasuke reported, his Sharingan tracking the process. Hinata's precise chakra control is stabilizing the shadow energy within your system, Naruto. The effect was immediately noticeable to Naruto. His perception of the shadow realm sharpened, becoming more detailed and expansive. He could sense shadow signatures at greater distances and with more precision than before. Try commanding your army, Sasuke suggested. See if the connection enhances your control. Naruto directed his Shadow W soldiers through a series of complex maneuvers, flanking movements, coordinated attacks, defensive formations. To his surprise, they responded with greater speed and precision, as if the commands were being transmitted more clearly. It's working, he confirmed. They're more responsive, more coordinated. And the chakra cost is lower, Hinata added, monitoring the energy flow. I can see how my chakra is filtering yours somehow, removing inefficiencies in the transmission. Sasuke circled them, studying the connection from different angles. Can you maintain this link at a distance? Does it require direct physical proximity? An excellent question. Naruto and Hinata experimentally moved apart, finding that the shadow connection could stretch to about 10 meters before beginning to thin and weaken. Beyond 15 meters, it broke completely. Limited range, Sasuke noted, but still tactically useful if you remain relatively close during combat. They spent the next hour exploring this newfound capability, testing its limits and applications. They discovered that Hinata could temporarily hold Naruto's shadow commands, maintaining his control over shadow soldiers even when his attention was divided elsewhere. This would allow him to focus on direct combat while still coordinating his shadow army through her. It's like having a shadow general, Naruto realized. Someone who can relay my intentions to the army while I engage the primary threat. The tactical implications were significant. With Hinata acting as his conduit, Naruto could potentially command a much larger shadow army without suffering from divided attention or control strain. After a brief rest, they moved to the final phase of the day's training, combining rapid shadow extraction with the conduit connection to maximize combat effectiveness. I'll create shadow clones to simulate enemy combatants, Sasuke explained. Defeat them, extract their shadows if possible, and incorporate the new shadows immediately into your ongoing strategy. Hinata will maintain the conduit connection throughout. The scenario began, with Sasuke's clones attacking from multiple directions. Naruto engaged them directly while maintaining awareness of his shadow army through his connection with Hinata. As each clone was defeated, he attempted shadow extraction, with mixed results. You can't extract from my shadow clones, Sasuke explained after the first attempt failed. They don't possess true shadows of their own. Focus on the training animals we have remaining. Adjusting his strategy, Naruto directed his attention to the creatures Sasuke released into the battle. Each successful extraction added to his army, which Hinata helped coordinate against Sasuke's continuing clone assaults. The exercise pushed both Naruto and Hinata to their limits. Maintaining the conduit connection while actively fighting required intense concentration from both of them, and the rapid shadow extractions drained Naruto's chakra reserves despite the efficiency improvements. By late afternoon, they were both exhausted but satisfied with their progress. Naruto's shadow army had grown to include 15 distinct soldiers, and his control through the conduit connection with Hinata had improved significantly. Enough for today, Sasuke decided, seeing their fatigue. You've both made substantial progress. Tomorrow we'll focus on integrating these new capabilities into team tactics with Sakura. The shrine mission will require coordinated effort from all of us. As they prepared to leave the training ground, Sasuke pulled Naruto aside briefly. The connection with Hinata, he said quietly. It's more significant than I initially realized. Her Byakugan allows her to see and interact with shadow energy in ways that might be unique among the Hyuga. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked, glancing toward Hinata who was gathering her things nearby. Potentially very good for our tactical options, Sasuke replied. But it makes her a target if Malgrath's followers realize her importance. We'll need to account for that in our mission planning. The concern was valid. If the enemy identified Hinata as a key component of Naruto's shadow capabilities, they might prioritize separating or eliminating her during confrontations. I won't let anything happen to her, Naruto stated firmly. Sasuke's expression remained neutral, but there was a hint of understanding in his eyes. Just be aware that protecting her might be exactly what an enemy would use to manipulate you. Tactical decisions need to remain objective. He warning was classic Sasuke. Pragmatic to the point of coldness, but ultimately aimed at mission success and team survival. Naruto nodded acknowledgement, though inwardly he knew some priorities transcended pure tactical considerations. After Sasuke departed, Naruto joined Hinata for the walk back to the village. Despite her obvious fatigue, she moved with the natural grace that characterized all her movements. Her steps light and precise. Thank you for today, Naruto said as they walked. The conduit connection is, well, it's amazing. I didn't realize how much it would enhance everything. Hinata smiled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. It was an interesting experience. I could feel your intentions flowing through the connection, not just commands to the shadows, but your protective instincts, your determination. The revelation that she could sense his emotional state through the shadow connection was both fascinating and slightly embarrassing. Naruto wondered what else might they been transmitted across their linked shadows. Was it uncomfortable? He asked. Being connected to the shadow energy like that. Hinata considered the question carefully. Not uncomfortable, no. Different, certainly. The shadow energy feels cool, like flowing water, but with purpose and awareness. It recognized me somehow, accepted my presence. Her description matched Ashbourne's earlier observation about her natural affinity for the shadow energy. Whatever the reason for this compatibility, it had unlocked a new dimension of Naruto's Shadow Monarch abilities. Would you be willing to maintain that connection during the shrine mission? Naruto asked. It would significantly improve our tactical options, but I understand if it's too much to ask. Of course I will, Hinata replied without hesitation. If it helps protect the team and complete the mission, I'm happy to serve as your conduit. Her readiness to help, to place herself at the center of ancient shadow powers without fear, reinforced Naruto's growing admiration for her quiet strength. Hinata had always been there, supporting him from the shadows. How fitting that she would now help him command those very shadows. As they reached the village proper, Naruto made an impulsive decision. Are you hungry? We could get dinner somewhere, to recover our energy after all that training. The invitation was casual in wording but significant in intent. This wasn't the group meal at Ichiraku's from days before. This was just the two of them, deliberately choosing to spend time together beyond what the mission required. Ada's eyes widened slightly before she smiled. I'd like that. There's a nice tea house near the Hyuga compound that serves excellent dumplings. They changed course toward the eastern district where the older, more traditional establishments were located. The tea house Hinata recommended was indeed excellent, a small, elegant building with private booths separated by bamboo screens and gardens visible through open walls. As they settled into their booth, Naruto felt a curious mix of comfort and nervousness. He had faced ancient shadow entities with less trepidation than he felt sitting across from Hinata in this quiet, intimate setting. I don't come to places like this often, he admitted, looking around at the carefully arranged decor and traditional serving implements. My father brings important guests here, Hinata explained, but I like it because it's peaceful. Sometimes after difficult missions, I come here alone to center myself. The fact that she had brought him to a place of personal significance wasn't lost on Naruto. As they ordered and began to eat, their conversation flowed more easily than he had expected, touching on their training, the upcoming mission, and eventually more personal topics. How has your family reacted to your extended absence for these missions? Naruto asked, knowing the Hyuga clan maintained strict expectations for their members. Hinata's expression grew slightly distant. My father was concerned when he learned I was working directly with shadow manipulation techniques. The Hyuga have ancient records that mention shadow entities similar to what we've encountered. He warned me to be cautious. But he didn't forbid you from participating. She shook her head. No. In fact, he suggested I might be particularly suited to the task because of our visual prowess. The Byakugan can perceive chakra patterns that others cannot, including those within shadow energy. This aligned with what they had discovered during training. Hinata's Byakugan allowed her to interact with shadow energy in ways that made her an ideal conduit for Naruto's abilities. What about you? She asked. How are you adjusting to all of this? Not just the shadow techniques, but being at the center of an ancient conflict. The question touched on concerns Naruto had been processing privately. It's strange, he admitted. All my life, I wanted acknowledgement, strength to protect others. But this power, this responsibility, it's different from what I imagined. He stared into his tea, watching the subtle shadows cast by the leaves. With the 9 tails, the power was destructive. Chaotic. Something to be contained and redirected. The Shadow Monarch system is more purposeful. It's about command, leadership, building something rather than just restraining destruction. And that suits you, Hinata observed softly. You've always been a natural leader, bringing people together, inspiring them to follow you. The Shadow Soldiers are just an extension of that same quality. Her perspective helped clarify something Naruto had been feeling but couldn't quite articulate. That despite its unusual nature, the Shadow Monarch system resonated with core aspects of who he was and who he aspired to be. Thank you, he said simply, for seeing that, and for saying it. Their conversation continued as evening deepened around them, touching on lighter topics and occasional laughter. For a few precious hours, they were not the Shadow Monarch and his conduit, but simply Naruto and Hinata, 2 young shinobi sharing a meal and conversation away from the pressures of their duties. When they finally left the tea house, the village was quiet under a canopy of stars. They walked slowly toward the Hyuga compound, neither rushing to end the evening. Same Tim. Tomorrow for the final day of training? Naruto asked as they approached the compound gates. Hinata nodded. I'll be there. Sakura mentioned she would join us as well to integrate medical support into our shadow tactics. They paused at the entrance, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them that the evening had meant something beyond mere recuperation from training. Good night, Hinata, Naruto said softly. And thank you for everything today. Good night, Naruto, she replied with equal warmth. I'll see you tomorrow. As Naruto turned to leave, he felt his shadow stretch briefly. Tawa rode hers one final time, a gesture that now felt as natural as a handshake or embrace. Her shadow responded, meeting his in a momentary connection before they separated. Walking home through the darkened streets, Naruto reflected on how quickly his life had changed since that rainy night when he had accepted the stranger's offer. The Shadow Monarch system had transformed not just his abilities but his relationships, his perspective, his very understanding of the world around him. And tomorrow would bring the final day of intensive training before they departed for the Uzumaki Shrine, a mission that might reveal more about both his heritage and the ancient conflict he had inherited along with Ashbourne's power. Whatever challenges awaited, Naruto felt more prepared to face them, not just because of his growing shadow army, but because of the bonds he was strengthening with those who stood beside him in this strange new chapter of his life. The 3rd day of training introduced team integration, with Sakura joining Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke in the Forest of Death. Her medical expertise would be crucial for the shrine mission, particularly if they encountered Malgrath's followers and the combat turned dangerous. Today we focus on team tactics, Sasuke explained as they gathered in the now familiar training area. Naruto's shadow abilities provide unique options for both offense and defense, but they need to be coordinated with our conventional techniques for maximum effectiveness. Sakura examined the shadow soldiers Naruto summoned with professional interest. These constructs maintain consistent chakra networks despite being composed of shadow energy, she observed. Can they be healed with medical ninjutsu if damaged? I'm not sure, Naruto admitted. We haven't tried that yet. Let's find out, Sakura suggested. Command one of your minor shadows to allow me to damage it slightly, then I'll attempt healing. Naruto directed one of the forest creature shadows, a snake he had extracted during the previous day's training, to approach Sakura. She created a small incision in its shadow form with a precisely controlled chakra scalpel, then immediately applied healing chakra to the wound. To everyone's surprise, the medical ninjutsu worked, sealing the damage and restoring the shadow snake to its previous condition. Fascinating, Sakura murmured. The shadow constructs respond to healing chakra similarly to physical bodies. This gives a significant tactical flexibility. I can provide medical support to both the team and your shadow army during extended engagements. The discovery opened new possibilities for their mission planning. Naruto's shadow soldiers could engage high-risk targets with Sakura providing healing support, reducing the need to dismiss and resummon damaged shadows during combat. Let's integrate this with the conduit connection, Sasuke suggested. Naruto and Hinata maintain their shadow link while Sakura provides medical support to both human team members and shadow constructs as needed. They spent the morning running increasingly complex combat scenarios, with Sasuke creating elaborate situations using shadow clones, training dummies, and the remaining forest creatures. Naruto commanded his shadow army through his connection with Hinata, while Sakura moved between positions, healing injuries to both humans and shadows. By midday, they had developed several effective formations that leveraged each team member's strengths. Sasuke's Sharingan and fire techniques provided ranged offensive capabilities, while Naruto's Shadow LDers formed both the front line and mobile strike teams. Hinata maintained the conduit connection while using her Byakugan for reconnaissance and perimeter defense, and Sakura provided medical RT while serving as a secondary striker when needed. The coordination is good, Sasuke assessed during a break. But we need contingency plans for if the conduit connection is disrupted. Naruto, you need to be able to command your shadows effectively even without Hinata's assistance. It was a valid concern. If Malbrath's followers recognized the tactical importance of the conduit connection, why might specifically target Hinata or use techniques to disrupt the shadow link? We should practice both configurations, Naruto agreed. With and without the conduit active. The afternoon session focused on these contingencies, with Sasuke occasionally removing Hinata from the scenario to force Naruto to adapt his command structure. Though less efficient without the conduit connection, Naruto developed workarounds, primarily by assigning his core shadows like the Tiger and the Inuzuka Chunin as sub-commanders who could direct groups of lesser shadows. Your shadow army has a natural hierarchy, Sasuke observed. The stronger, more intelligent shadows can relay commands to the others even without direct input from you. That's a significant tactical advantage. The insight helped refine their approach further. By the end of the day, they had established primary tactics utilizing the full team with the conduit connection active, and contingency plans for various scenarios where Team members might be separated or incapacitated. I believe we're as prepared as we can be with the time available, Sasuke concluded as they finished the final exercise. We depart for the Uzumaki Shrine tomorrow at dawn. Pack for a 5-day mission, including potential combat with shadow users. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the training ground, Tsunade arrived unexpectedly, accompanied by Shikamaru and Shino. Lady Hokage, Sasuke acknowledged with surprise. We weren't expecting you. I wanted to see your progress firsthand, Tsunade replied, her gaze assessing the training area and the shadow soldiers Naruto still had manifested. Impressive. Shikamaru has briefed me on your training regimen, but seeing these shadow techniques in action is quite different from hearing reports. She approached one of the shadow soldiers, the Inuzuka Chunin, studying it with both clinical interest and solemn respect. Takeo Inuzuka, I remember when we lost him in that ambush. His family would be interested to know he continues to serve in some form. The comment raised an ethical question Naruto had been considering. Should I tell the families of the fallen whose shadows have extracted? Would it bring comfort or just reopen wounds? Tsunade considered this thoughtfully. Perhaps not yet. Wait until your command of these abilities is more established, more publicly known. Then those conversations might be easier for all involved. Her pragmatic approach made sense. The concept of shadow extraction was still new and potentially disturbing to those unfamiliar with it. Better to introduce it gradually. After people had seen the respectful way Naruto treated his shadow soldiers. We have additional intelligence regarding the Uzumaki Shrine, Shikamaru reported, changing the subject. Shino's insects have detected increased activity in that area over the past 24 hours. It appears Malgrath's followers are already preparing for whatever operation they have planned. That moves up our timeline. Sasuke noted with a frown. We should depart immediately rather than waiting for dawn. Tsunade nodded agreement. Prepare quickly and leave within the hour. If they're already at the shrine, we need to determine what they're seeking before they find it. The urgency was clear. Their 3 days of training would have to suffice, as the mission could no longer wait. One more thing, Tsunade added, handing Naruto a small scroll bearing the Uzumaki clan seal. This was among your mother's possessions. It contains information about the shrine and the sealing techniques associated with it. Study it en route. It might provide insights about what Malgrath's followers are seeking. The scroll was an unexpected gift, a connection to his mother's heritage and potentially valuable information for their mission. Naruto accepted it with both gratitude and reverence. Thank you, Granny Tsunade. I'll make good use of it. With their new orders, the team dispersed to prepare for immediate departure. Naruto returned to his apartment quickly, packing essential supplies and weapons while his shadow soldiers returned to his shadow for rest and recovery. The Uzumaki were masters of sealing techniques. Ashbourne commented as Naruto gathered his equipment. If Malgrath seeks knowledge from their shrine, it likely pertains to breaking the seals that still bind portions of his power. All the more reason to get there first, Naruto replied aloud, securing his supply pouch. Or at least understand what he's after. Within the hour, the team reassembled at Konoha's gates, Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, and Sakura, each equipped for extended field operations and potential combat. Shikamaru and Tsunade saw them off with final instructions and cautions. This is primarily an intelligence mission. Tsunade reminded them, understand what Malgrath's followers are seeking before engaging directly. If you can secure or destroy whatever they're after, do so, but you're safe. Tai takes priority over direct confrontation. Maintain regular communication, Shikamaru added. We've established a network of relay points between here and the shrine. Report any significant finding. GS immediately rather than waiting until your return. With these instructions and final words of caution, the team departed, moving swiftly through the forests north of Konoha. The Uzumaki shrine lay approximately 6 hours away at their fastest sustainable pace, longer if they encountered obstacles or opposition. As they traveled, Naruto studied his mother's scroll, absorbing information about the shrine and its significance to the Uzumaki clan. The structure had been built generations ago as a repository for sealing knowledge too dangerous or powerful for common use. Access had traditionally been restricted to Uzumaki clan members and those they specifically authorized. According to this, the shrine contains 3 levels, Naruto reported to his teammates as they moved. The upper level was for general sealing techniques, accessible to any recognized Uzumaki. The middle level contained more powerful methods, restricted to senior clan members. The lowest level was reserved for what He called deity bindings, seals specifically designed to contain powerful non-human entities. Like tailed beasts, Sasuke observed, are shadow deities. Exactly. And access to that level required both Uzumaki blood and specific chakra signatures. There were safeguards to prevent forced entry. This information clarified why Malgrath's followers would target the shrine. If they sought to fully manifest their master in the physical world, they would need sealing techniques powerful enough to stabilize the transfer between realms. Does the scroll mention any specific artifacts or documents stored in the shrine? Hinata asked. Naruto continued reading. It mentions something called the Codex of Boundaries, apparently a collection of the most powerful Uzumaki sealing methods, specifical L. Why those dealing with interdimensional barriers? That has to be what they're after, Sakura concluded. Methods to break the barriers between realms would allow Malgrath to manifest more completely than he did at the temple. The possibility added urgency to their already accelerated timeline. If Malgrath's followers obtained such knowledge, their next ritual could succeed where the previous one had failed. As night fell, they maintained their pace, using Hinata's Byakugan to navigate the increasingly rugged terrain. The shrine was located in a remote valley, deliberately isolated from popula. Qian centers to protect its dangerous knowledge. Approximately 2 hours from their destination, Hinata suddenly signaled for the team to halt. Movement ahead, she reported, her Byakugan active. 2 groups of 3 individuals each, moving in parallel paths toward the shrine. Their chakra signatures are unusual, similar to the hybrids we encountered in Tanzaku town. Malgrath's followers, Naruto confirmed, extending his shadow senses. I can feel the twisted shadow energy from here. They're not full constructs, but humans partially infused with shadow essence. Can we bypass them? Sasuke asked, always focused on the mission objective. Hinata scanned the terrain. Possibly. There's a ravine to the east that would allow us to circle around their position. It would add approximately 40 minutes to our journey. Worth it, Sakura decided. Better to reach the shrine undetected than to alert them to our presence by engaging now. The team adjusted their route, taking the longer path to avoid detection. The ravine Hinata had identified was narrow and treacherous in the darkness, requiring careful navigation even with her Byakugan guidance. As they emerged on the other side, the valley that contained the Uzumaki shrine came into view. The structure itself was barely visible in the moonlight, a traditional Uzumaki design with spiraling motifs incorporated into the stone architecture. More concerning were the figures moving around it, at least a dozen shadow hybrids, with more arriving from different directions. They've assembled in force, Sasuke observed grimly. More than we anticipated, and they've already breached the outer perimeter, Naruto added, noting the broken seals visible even from their distance. We need to move quickly. The team formulated a rapid infiltration plan. Hinata would use her Byakugan to identify gaps in the enemy's security perimeter, allowing them to approach undetected. Naruto would have shadow soldiers ready but not manifested, to avoid alerting the enemy to their presence through shadow energy signatures. Sasuke and Sakura would remain in close support, ready to engage if discovery became inevitable. Moving with the stealth that characterized Konoha shinobi, they approached the shrine, using natural cover and the confusion of the enemy's own activities to mask their presence. When they reached the outer walls, Hinata IDED them to a section where the enemy presence was minimal. The main activity is centered on the shrine's entrance, she reported quietly. They appear to be working on breaking a large seal that blocks access to the lower levels. Can we enter another way? Sakura asked. Naruto consulted his mother's scroll. There's a secondary entrance designed for emergencies, a blood-sealed passage that only responds to Uzumaki chakra. It should be located on the eastern side of the structure. They circled to the eastern wall, finding the location described in the scroll, an innocuous stone panel carved with the Uzumaki spiral. Naruto pressed his palm against it, channeling chakra while focusing on his Uzumaki heritage. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, responding to either his bloodline or his intent, the stone began to glow softly with chakra patterns that spiraled outward from his hand. The panel receded silently, revealing a narrow passage leading downward into darkness. I'll go first, Naruto whispered. My shadow senses might detect traps or guardians that normal vision would miss. The team entered in single file, with Hinata's Byakugan providing awareness of both the passage ahead and the enemy movements outside. The tunnel descended steeply, bypassing the upper levels of the shrine to connect directly with the restricted lower chambers. According to the scroll, this passage was designed for Uzumaki clan leaders to access the most dangerous sealing methods quickly in case of emergency, Naruto explained as they descended. It should take us directly to where the codex would be stored. The passage eventually opened into a large circular chamber carved from solid rock. Ancient Uzumaki sealing patterns covered the walls and floor, illuminated by a soft, ambient chakra glow that activated upon their entry. At the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, empty except for a thin layer of dust. We're too late, Sakura realized, examining the pedestal. Something was stored here recently, The dust pattern shows it was removed within the past day or so. The Codex? Sasuke questioned. Likely, Naruto confirmed, feeling a sense of foreboding. But why would the Shrine's defenses allow them to remove it? The scroll mentioned blood seals and chakra barriers specifically to prevent unauthorized access. Hinata activated her Byakugan, examining the chamber more thoroughly. There's residual chakra everywhere, signs of a struggle or forced entry. And something else. She approached one of the walls, where a complex sealing pattern had been partially defaced. This seal was broken from within the chamber, not from outside. The implication was troubling. Someone was already here, Naruto concluded. Someone who had access privileges or found a way to bypass the blood seals. Or someone who was sealed here, Sasuke suggested grimly. Remember what Ashbourne said about Malgrath being sealed away? What if part of that sealing used Uzumaki techniques? The possibility sent a chill through the team. If some aspect of Malgrath had been contained within the shrine itself, and his followers had found a way to release it. A sudden commotion above them interrupted their speculation. Through the stone ceiling, they could hear shouts and the distinctive sounds of combat. Something's happening up there, Sakura said, looking toward the ceiling. Hinata extended her Byakugan's range. The shadow hybrids are engaging another group that just arrived, shinobi, but I don't recognize their headbands or chakra signatures. We need to see what's happening, Sasuke decided. If a third faction is involved, it changes our approach. They quickly retraced their steps through the secret passage, emerging into the night to find the shrine grounds in chaos. Shadow hybrids battled what appeared to be rogue shinobi from various villages, their forehead protectors scratched through with the mark of missing nin. In the center of the conflict stood a familiar figure, the vessel they had encountered in Tanzaku town, now wielding a large scroll that could only be the Codex of Boundaries. They have what they came for, Naruto observed. But who are these other shinobi? As if in answer to his question, one of the missing nin shouted across the battlefield, the Codex belongs to Lord Orochimaru. Surrender it or die, Orochimaru. Sasuke's voice hardened at the name of his former mentor. Of course he would be interested in interdimensional sealing techniques. The situation had become even more complicated. Now 3 factions competed for the Codex, Malgrath's followers, Orochimaru's agents, and their own team. We need to secure that scroll, Naruto stated, readying himself for combat. Hinata, establish the conduit connection. I'll summon my shadow army. As Hinata moved beside him, their shadows linking on the ground, Naruto called forth his soldiers. The tiger, the Inuzuka Chunin, the forest creatures, and all the others emerged from his shadow, forming ranks around the team. The sudden appearance of a shadow army caused both enemy factions to pause momentarily, assessing this new threat. The vessel's masked face turned toward Naruto, recognition evident in their posture. The false monarch returns, they called across the battlefield. Too late, as usual. The Codex is ours, and with it, the true sovereign will rise in full glory. Not if we have anything to say about it, Naruto replied, directing his shadow soldiers to form an advancing wedge. That knowledge was protected by my clan for a reason. I won't let you misuse it. The vessel laughed, the sound hollow behind their mask. Your clan, the Uzumaki, are scattered to the winds, their legacy all but forgotten. This knowledge returns to its rightful owner now, the 1W. Ho taught the Uzumaki their sealing arts in the first. The one who taught the Uzumaki their sealing arts in the first place. This claim struck Naruto like a physical blow. Could it be true that the Uzumaki clan's renowned sealing techniques had originated with Malgrath or one of the other shadow monarchs? The possibility created an unexpected connection between his maternal heritage and his newly acquired shadow powers. Enough talk, Sasuke declared, drawing his sword. Secure the Codex. That's our priority. The team launched into action with the coordinated precision their training had developed. Naruto's shadow army engaged the outer perimeter of both enemy forces, creating confusion and dividing their attention. Sasuke targeted Orochimaru's agents with lightning-fast sword strikes, WH. Sakura focused on the shadow hybrids, her chakra-enhanced punches particularly effective against their partially physical forms. Through his conduit connection with Hinata, Naruto maintained control over his shadow soldiers while engaging directly in the combat. The connection felt stronger than during their training, perhaps due to the high-stakes situation or the proximity to Uzumaki. Sealing techniques that somehow resonated with both their chakra networks. The vessel is attempting to retreat, Hinata reported, her Byakugan tracking movements across the battlefield. Their HEA. Ding for the northern exit with 3 shadow hybrids as guards. Intercept them, Naruto directed, sending the tiger and 3 of his stronger shadows to cut off their escape route. Meanwhile, Hifu, GHT his way toward the center of the conflict, determined to reach the vessel himself. The battle intensified as both enemy factions realized the Konoha team was gaining advantage. Orochimaru's agents began using forbidden techniques, body modifications and cursed seals that transformed them into monstrous forms. The shadow hybrids responded with increasingly desperate shadow techniques, draining their own life force to fuel more powerful attacks. Through it all, Naruto's team maintained their coordination. Sakura moved between combat and medical support, healing injuries to both teammates and shadow soldiers. Sasuke's Sharingan predicted enemy movements, allowing him to disrupt their formations with precisely timed fire techniques. Hinata maintained the conduit connection while using her Gentle Fist to neutralize enemies that broke through their perimeter. As Naruto fought his way toward the vessel, he found himself facing a particularly powerful shadow hybrid, one whose eyes glowed with an intensity that suggested greater infusion of shadow essence than the others. "You cannot stop the Sovereign's return," the hybrid growled, shadows swirling around its arms to form blade-like extensions. "The age of shadows comes whether you will it or not. Then it will come on my terms," Naruto countered, forming a shadow Rasengan in his palm. Not as conquest, but as balance. Their clash sent shockwaves across the battlefield, shadow energy reacting violently with the spiraling chakra of Naruto's technique. The hybrid's form began to destabilize under the assault, its borrowed shadow essence unable to withstand the concentrated attack. As the hybrid fell, Naruto felt the familiar pull of an available shadow. Without hesitation, he extracted it, drawing the twisted shadow essence into his own and purifying it in the process. The sensation was different from his previous extractions, more resistance, more effort required to cleanse the corrupted energy. Shadow extraction successful. Purified shadow hybrid added to army. The notification in his mind confirmed what he had felt. The shadow had been cleansed through the extraction process, its essence returned to a more natural state. This was a capability Ashbourne hadn't mentioned, the ability to purify corrupted shadows through the Shadow Monarch system. "A unique application of your particular shadow energy," Ashbourne commented, seeming surprised himself. The Nine Tails transformed chakra appears to neutralize Malgrath's corruption. This discovery added a new dimension to Naruto's role in the conflict. Not only could he oppose Malgrath's followers directly, but he could potentially redeem the shadows they had corrupted, returning them to their natural state within his own army. With renewed determination, Naruto pressed forward, finally breaking through to where the vessel was attempting to escape with the codex. His shadow soldiers had succeeded in blocking the northern exit, forcing the vessel to engage directly. "Surrender the scroll," Naruto demanded, his shadow army forming a perimeter around them. "Whatever Malgrath has promised you, it's not worth destroying the balance between realms." The vessel clutched the codex protectively, shadow energy swirling around their masked form. "You understand nothing, false monarch. The sovereign doesn't seek to destroy balance, he seeks to create a new order, 1wh. Ere death is not the end and life is not limited by mortal constraints." "At what cost?" Naruto challenged. "Draining innocent people of their chakra. Creating twisted shadow constructs that serve without choice. That's not order, it's tyranny." "A small price for transcendence," the vessel replied. Then, seeing they were truly cornered, they made a desperate decision. "If I cannot take the codex, then neither shall you." Shadow energy erupted from their hands, engulfing the ancient scroll. The vessel began a complex sealing technique, not to protect the codex, but to destroy it. "No." Naruto lunged forward, his shadow stretching ahead of him to intercept the technique. He could not allow the Uzumaki sealing knowledge to be lost, regardless of its origins. In that moment, something unexpected happened. As his shadow touched the codex, the scroll responded, ancient seals illuminating with a familiar chakra signature that resonated with his Uzumaki heritage. The destructive technique the vessel had initiated reversed direction, turning back upon its caster. The vessel screamed as their own shadow energy consumed them, their mask cracking to reveal a face partially transformed into living shadow. This isn't possible. Quote, blood recognizes blood, Naruto stated, understanding flowing through him as the Codex's seals interacted with his dual nature, Uzumaki heritage and Shadow Monarch power combined. The knowledge returns to its guardian. The Codex floated from the vessel's grasp to Naruto's outstretched hand, its seals recognizing him as its rightful protector. As it settled into his grasp, knowledge flowed into him, not the specific techniques contained within, but an understanding of its purpose and the responsibility it represented. With their leader disabled and the Codex lost, the remaining shadow hybrids began to retreat. Orochimaru's agents, seeing the tide turn decisively against them, likewise disengaged, disappearing into the night with the efficiency of well-trained shinobi. As the battlefield quieted, Naruto's team regrouped around him, eyeing the ancient scroll now securely in his possession. Is that it? The Codex of Boundaries? Sakura asked, her ethical attention divided between treating Sasuke's minor wounds and examining the scroll with professional curiosity. Yes, Naruto confirmed, feeling the power contained within its seals. And it's more significant than we realized. It contains techniques for maintaining the boundaries between realms, not just sealing tailed beasts or shadow entities, but preserving the very structure that separates life, death, and shadow. Which is exactly what Malgrath seeks to collapse, Sasuke concluded, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. No wonder his followers wanted it so badly. And Orochimaru as well, Hinata added, her Byakugan still active as she monitored the retreating enemies. Interdimensional techniques would align with his immortality research. Naruto studied the vessel, who had collapsed to the ground. Their shadow-infused form destabilizing without the constant will to maintain it. What happens to them now? Without Malgrath's direct influence, the shadow infusion will likely fail, Sasuke theorized. Either returning them to fully human state or consuming them entirely. As if confirming his assessment, the vessel's body began to dissolve, shadow particles separating from human flesh. The process appeared neither peaceful nor painless, drawing a grimace of empathy from Naruto despite their adversarial relationship. Is there anything we can do? He asked, looking to his teammates. Sakura approached cautiously, her medical instincts overriding tactical considerations. She examined the dissolving form with her chakra-sensing abilities, then shook her head sadly. The shadow essence is too deeply integrated with their biological systems. Removing it would be like removing half their organs. There's nothing we can do. The vessel's mask fell away completely, revealing the face of a middle-aged woman, her features distorted by shadow transformation but still recognizably human. Her eyes, now fading from sickly blue to natural brown, fixed on Naruto. He will still come, she whispered, her voice stronger now that it was freed from the hollow resonance of shadow essence. The sovereign gathers strength even now. This defeat is temporary. Who are you? Naruto asked, kneeling beside her. Why serve Malgrath? A bitter smile crossed her features. I was a scholar, researching ancient chakra patterns when I discovered references to the shadow realm. Malgrath's followers found me, offered knowledge in exchange for service. Her body shuddered as more shadow essence separated from her form. The knowledge was intoxicating. Worth any price, or so I believed. And now, Naruto pressed gently. Now I see, the price was too high. Her gaze intensified, fixing on the codex in Naruto's hands. Guard it well, Shadow Monarch of Konoha. The techniques within can either preserve the boundaries, or shatter them forever. With those final words, her form collapsed completely, shadow essence dispersing into the night air while her human remains settled into dust that scattered on the gentle breeze. No body remained to bury or honor, just another victim of Malgrath's manipulation. Naruto stood slowly, the codex heavy in his hands. Not from physical weight but from the responsibility it represented. We need to secure this somewhere safe. Not just from Malgrath's followers, but from anyone who might misuse its knowledge. Back to Konoha, Sasuke decided. Lady Tsunade needs to know what we've discovered, and the village has secure facilities for artifacts of this nature. Before they could depart, Hinata's Byakugan detected something else. There's a chamber beneath the main shrine that's still active, she reported. Seals are pulsing with chakra, different from the battle energy, more deliberate. We should investigate before leaving, Sakura suggested. If there's more knowledge or artifacts that Malgrath's followers might return for, we need to know. Naruto nodded agreement, securing the codex inside his jacket. Let's check it quickly, then head back. I don't want to risk this scroll being in the open any longer than necessary. They re-entered the shrine, now eerily quiet after the battle outside. Following Hinata's guidance, they descended to the lowest level, bypassing damaged seals and collapsed passageways until they reached a small chamber deep beneath the main structure. Unlike the room with the pedestal they had discovered earlier, this chamber remained intact, its seals glowing with steady chakra. At its center stood a stone basin filled with what appeared to be liquid shadow, similar to what they had seen in the temple during Malgrath's attempted manifestation, but more controlled, more refined. What is this place? Sakura whispered, her voice automatically lowering in the presence of such ancient power. Naruto approached the basin carefully, feeling both drawn to and cautious of its contents. According to the scroll, the Uzumaki maintained repositories of purified shadow essence, used in their most powerful sealing techniques to create barriers that even shadow entities couldn't penetrate. Purified how? Sasuke questioned, Sharingan active as he studied the liquid shadow. Through Uzumaki blood and chakra. Naruto replied, knowledge flowing from both the codex and Ashbourne's presence within him. Their life force naturally cleansed shadow essence of corrupting influences. The discovery created another connection between his maternal heritage and his new powers, suggesting the Uzumaki clan had been involved with shadow manipulation for generations, perhaps even contributing to the sealing of Malgrath that Ashbourne had described. This essence has been preserved for decades, maybe centuries, Hinata observed, her Byakugan revealing the intricate chakra patterns that maintained the basin's contents. It's remarkably stable compared to the shadow energy we've encountered elsewhere. Naruto felt a pull from the liquid shadow, not the extractive pull of available shadows, but something more fundamental. As if it recognized his dual nature as both Uzumaki and Shadow Monarch. I think it's meant for me, he said slowly, extending his hand toward the basin. Or someone like me, an Uzumaki with shadow affinity. Naruto. Wait, Sakura began, but he had already made contact with the liquid shadow. The sensation was immediate and profound, cool energy flowing up his arm and throughout his body, integrating seamlessly with his existing shadow essence. Unlike the raw power of extraction or the focused purpose of commanding shadow soldiers, this was refined, refined energy that enhanced his entire connection to the shadow realm. Shadow essence absorption complete. Shadow Monarch system evolving to intermediate stage. The notification in his mind confirmed what he felt physically. His connection to the Shadow Monarch system was deepening, evolving beyond the basic capabilities he had mastered during their training. What's happening? Sasuke demanded, watching as the liquid shadow drained from the basin into Naruto's form. The system is evolving, Naruto explained, feeling new abilities and insights flooding his consciousness. This essence was served specifically for that purpose, to help an Uzumaki Shadow Monarch reach the next stage of development. As the last of the liquid shadow was absorbed, the basin's seals faded, their purpose fulfilled after countless years of vigilant preservation. Naruto stood straighter, his shadow darkening and expanding slightly around his feet. How do you feel? Hinata asked, her Byakugan tracking the changes in his chakra network. More connected, Naruto replied, searching for words to describe the transformation. Like I can perceive the shadow realm more clearly, interact with it more precisely. And I understand techniques that were just concepts before. The intermediate stage grants greater command radius, more efficient extraction, and the ability to manifest shadow constructs at greater distances from yourself. Ashbourne explained, his voice stronger and clearer than before. It also allows limited perception through your shadow soldier's senses, seeing what they see, hearing what they hear. These enhancements would significantly improve Naruto's tactical options in future confrontations with Malgrath's followers. The ability to perceive through his shadows would provide Rikane-san's capabilities beyond even Hinata's Byakugan range. We should test these new abilities once we're safely back in Konoha, Sasuke suggested pragmatically. For now, we need to secure the codex and report what we've found." The team agreed, making a final sweep of the shrine to ensure no other artifacts or knowledge remained accessible to potential return visits by Malgrath's followers or Orochimaru's agents. Finding nothing else of significance, they began their journey back to Konoha, traveling through the night to put distance between themselves and the battlefield. As they moved through the darkened forest, Naruto felt a new awareness of the shadows around him, not just as potential soldiers or extensions of himself, but as a dimension that paralleled their own, rich with information and presence. The evolution of his system had expanded his perception in ways he was still discovering. "The conduit connection feels different now," Hinata commented as they traveled, their shadows still linked in the moonlight. "More reciprocal somehow. I can sense more of the shadow realm through it. The intermediate stage must enhance all aspects of the system," Naruto theorized. "Include how it interacts with compatible chakra networks like yours." This development raised interesting possibilities for their tactical coordination. If Hinata could perceive more of the shadow realm through their connection, she might be able to help interpret the information Naruto received from his shadow soldier's senses, filtering and organizing it into actionable intelligence. By dawn, they had covered significant distance. Pausing briefly at one of the relay points Shikamaru had established to send a coded message back to Konoha. They reported the successful acquisition of the codex, the confrontation with both Malgrath's followers and Orochimaru's agents, and the evolution of Naruto's Shadow Monarch system. "Lady Tsunade will want a full debriefing as soon as we return," Sakura noted as they continued their journey. "Especially regarding the connection between the Uzumaki clan and shadow techniques. And Orochimaru's interest in the codex," Sasuke added grimly. "His involvement complicates matters further." Indeed, what had begun as an investigation into unusual shadow attacks had expanded into a complex conflict involving ancient shadow entities, Uzumaki sealing techniques. And now one of the most dangerous missing nin in the shinobi world. The stakes continued to rise with each new discovery. As they traveled, Naruto experimented cautiously with his enhanced abilities. He found he could now maintain awareness of shadow signatures at much greater distances, detecting potential extractions or enemy shadow users up to a kilometer away in optimal conditions. His control over existing shadow soldiers had likewise improved, allowing more precise commands and more complex tactical arrangements. Most interesting was the sensory feedback from his shadow army. By concentrating on a specific shadow soldier, Naruto could perceive through its senses, a limited but useful form of remote viewing that could provide valuable reconnaissance in future operations. "Try connecting that ability through our conduit link," Hinata suggested when he explained this new capability. "Perhaps I can help interpret or clarify what your shadows perceive." The experiment proved successful. When Naruto channeled sensory feedback from one of his shadow soldiers through their conduit connection, Hinata could perceive it as well, sometimes with greater clarity due to her Byakugan's natural affinity for processing visual information. "This is remarkable," Sakura commented, observing their synchronized responses to information only they could perceive. "You're essentially creating a shadow-based communication network that bypasses conventional limitations." Sasuke, ever focused on practical applications, immediately recognized the tactical value. "We can use this for coordinated operations across much greater distances than normal communication allows. Your shadows could relay intelligence from multiple locations simultaneously." The potential applications extended beyond combat as well. Naruto's shadow soldiers could monitor areas of interest without risking team members, maintain surveillance of suspected enemy bases, or search large areas for specific targets or information. By the time they reached Konoha's gates the following evening, Naruto had developed a deeper understanding of his evolved abilities and their integration with team tactics. The mission had yielded, not just the codex, though that remained their primary achievement, but significant advancements in Naruto's development as the Shadow Monarch. Tsunade was waiting for them in her office despite the late hour. Along with Shikamaru and Jiraiya, who had returned from a separate intelligence-gathering mission regarding Orochimaru's recent activities. "Report," the Hokage ordered simply as they entered. Sasuke provided a concise summary of their mission: the confrontation at the shrine, the acquisition of the codex, the involvement of Orochimaru's agents, and the evolution of Naruto's Shadow Monarch system through the preserved shadow essence. "And the vessel," Tsunade inquired. Destabilized when separated from the codex, Sakura reported clinically. The shadow infusion collapsed, resulting in complete dissolution of both shadow essence and physical form. Tsunade nodded, then turned her attention to the ancient scroll Naruto had placed on her desk. The Codex of Boundaries. I've heard rumors of its existence since I was a child. The Uzumaki clan guarded it jealously, allowing access only to those they deemed worthy. The vessel claimed that the Uzumaki sealing techniques originated with Malgrath, Naruto mentioned. The claim still troubling him. That he was the one who taught them the arts they became famous for. Jiraiya frowned at this. Possible, but not necessarily as sinister as it sounds. Many clans' signature techniques have unexpected origins. The question is how the Uzumaki adapted and refined whatever knowledge they received. According to both the Codex and Ashbourne, they transformed it. Naruto explained, taking principles of shadow manipulation and developing seals that maintained the boundaries between realms rather than collapsing them. They became guardians rather than conquerors. This perspective aligned with what Naruto knew of his mother's clan, a people renowned not just for their sealing prowess but for their strong principles and protective nature. If they had indeed learned initial techniques from Malgrath or another shadow monarch, they had clearly redirected that knowledge toward preservation rather than domination. And now that knowledge is in our hands, Tsunade stated, looking thoughtfully at the codex. The question becomes, how do we use it to counter Malgrath's plans? The codex contains techniques for strengthening the barriers between realms, Naruto reported. Drawing on the knowledge that had flowed into him when he first touched the scroll. With proper application, we could potentially reinforce the seals that currently limit Malgrath's access to our world. Quote, but that would require identifying those seals, Shikamaru pointed out. Do we know where they're located? Not precisely, Naruto admitted. Ashbourne's description of the original sealing was incomplete, but with the codex and my evolved connection to the shadow realm, I might be able to sense their locations. Tsunade considered this information carefully. Your primary focus should be mastering your evolved abilities and studying the codex for applicable techniques. Shikamaru will continue coordinating intelligence gathering regarding Malgrath's followers and their activities. Jiraiya will investigate Orochimaru's interest in shadow techniques. The assignments made strategic sense. Each team member would focus on their strengths while contributing to the overall mission of countering Malgrath's return. What about the connection between Naruto's shadow abilities and Hinata's chakra network? Sasuke asked. The conduit capability has proven significantly useful and continues to evolve. Continue developing that as well, Tsunade decided after a moment's consideration. But with caution, we don't fully understand the long-term effects of sustained shadow energy exposure on non-monarch chakra networks. The concern was valid. Though Hinata had shown natural compatibility with Naruto's shadow energy, prolonged or intensive exposure might carry risks they hadn't yet identified. As the debriefing concluded, Tsunade had one final instruction. The codex will be secured in a special vault beneath the Hokage Tower, accessible only to those with specific authorization, which for now includes just the people in this room. Naruto, as both an Uzumaki descendant and the Shadow Monarch, you'll have primary access for study purposes. With their assignments clear and the immediate crisis addressed, the team was dismissed to rest and recover. The codex remained in Tsunade's office temporarily, to be transferred to the secure vault the following day under Anbu's supervision. As they left the Hokage Tower, the team split up to return to their respective homes. Naruto found himself walking alongside Hinata, both of them exhausted from the mission but satisfied with its outcome. Thank you, he said after they had walked in comfortable silence for several minutes. For everything, the conduit connection, your insights during the mission, all of it. I couldn't have managed any of this without your help. Hinata smiled gently. You would have found a way. You always do. But I'm glad I could be useful. More than useful, Naruto corrected earnestly. Essential. The shadow connection we've developed, it's becoming something really special. A faint blush colored her cheeks, visible even in the moonlight. It feels natural somehow, like our chakra networks were meant to harmonize this way. The observation aligned with Ashbourne's comments about their unusual compatibility. Whatever the reason, Hinata's Byakugan, her precise chakra control, Or something more fundamental about their personal connection, the shadow bond between them had become a significant element of Naruto's evolving abilities. They reached the point where their paths would diverge, Naruto toward his apartment, Hinata toward the Hyuga compound. Both hesitated, reluctant to end their conversation. "Would you like to train tomorrow?" Naruto asked suddenly. "To explore the evolved conduit connection, I mean. If you're not too tired from the mission." "I'd like that," Hinata replied with a smile that seemed to brighten the night around them. "The training ground at noon. Perfect. It's a date." Naruto caught himself, feeling heat rise to his face. "I mean, not a date, just a, scheduled meeting." "For training." Hinata's smile widened slightly at his flustered correction. "I knew what you meant. Good night, Naruto." "Good night, Hinata." As they parted ways, Naruto felt his shadow stretch briefly toward hers, now an instinctive gesture. That seemed as natural as a wave or smile. Her shadow responded in kind, maintaining the connection for a moment longer than physically necessary before they finally separated. Walking home through the quiet streets of Konoha, Naruto reflected on how much had changed in the short time since his transformation. He had gone from containing a tailed beast to commanding an army of shadows, from struggling with chakra control to evolving an ancient power system, from fighting local threats to confronting entities that transcended normal dimensions. Yet through all these extraordinary changes, as the human connections that anchored him, his teammates' support, Tsunade's guidance, and especially the unique bond forming between himself and Hinata. Whatever challenges lay ahead in this shadow conflict, Naruto would face them not as a solitary monarch, but as part of something greater, a network of bonds that gave purpose and direction to his growing power. As he reached his apartment and prepared for well-earned rest, Naruto sensed his shadow soldiers settling into a protective formation around his building, not by his conscious command, but responding to his subconscious desire for security. The evolution of his system had created a deeper integration between his will and his shadows, allowing them to anticipate his needs without explicit direction. "The mark of a true monarch," Ashbourne observed approvingly. "Not merely commanding shadows, but harmonizing with them." With that comforting thought, Naruto finally surrendered to exhaustion, falling into a deep sleep where dreams of shadow and light intermingled with visions of pale lavender eyes and gentle smiles. Chapter 2 End.